I stared at the voicemail notification on my phone, watching the Manhattan skyline glitter beyond my penthouse windows this Christmas Eve. My mother's tearful voice echoed through the speaker, begging me to come home, saying they desperately needed me. The irony tasted bitter in my mouth. 7 years ago, they emptied my entire college fund of $85,000 to pay for my younger sister Madison's private university tuition. "You'll find a way," Mom had said, then dismissing my dreams like yesterday's newspaper. Now they needed me, but the successful tech CEO I'd become existed despite them, not because of them. Their betrayal had forced me to build my empire from nothing, and now that empire was all I had on this cold December night. The memory crashed over me like ice water, dragging me back 7 years to that August evening when my entire world shattered. I was 18, 3 weeks away from starting my freshman year at Northwestern University when I decided to check my college savings account one final time. The laptop screen might as well have slapped me across the face. Zero balance. $85,000 gone without a trace. My hands trembled as I refreshed the page repeatedly, certain this had to be some technical error. That money wasn't just savings, it was my future carefully accumulated since I was born. My grandmother Rose had started it with a $10,000 deposit the day I came home from the hospital, adding to it every birthday and Christmas until she passed when I was 12. In her will, she'd left another $50,000 specifically for my education, with explicit instructions that it be used solely for that purpose. Mom, Dad. I'd practically fallen down the stairs in my rush to find them. They sat at our dining room table, calmly sorting through Madison's Yale acceptance packet. The pristine white envelope with its blue lettering seemed to mock me from across the room. "There's something wrong with my college account," I said, breathless with panic. "It's showing zero balance." My mother, Sandra, didn't even look up from the financial aid paperwork she was reviewing. "Oh, that. We needed to move some things around, honey." "Move things around." My voice cracked. "The account is empty." My father, Robert, finally raised his eyes to meet mine. No guilt flickered across his face, just mild annoyance at being interrupted. "Madison got into Yale JOLPay. Do you understand what that means? The opportunities she'll have with my college money?" The words came out as barely a whisper. "It's family money," Mom interjected smoothly. "And we decided as a family that Madison needs it more. Yale doesn't offer the kind of financial aid that Northwestern does. You'll find a way. You always do." The room spun around me. Madison sat in the corner, texting on her phone, not even pretending to care about the bomb they'd just dropped on my life. At 16, she wore designer jeans that cost more than my entire wardrobe, her perfectly manicured nails clicking against the latest iPhone screen. That money was from Grandma Rose. I managed to choke out. She left it specifically for my education. She wrote it in her will. My father's expression hardened. "Your grandmother would have wanted what's best for this family. Madison has exceptional potential. She needs Yale to reach it. And I don't need Northwestern." Tears burned my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. "You're resourceful," Mom said, finally looking at me with that practiced smile that never quite reached her eyes. "You've always been independent. Madison is different. She's special. She needs more support." Special. The word they'd used my entire life to explain why Madison got dance lessons while I got library cards, why she got summer camps while I got summer jobs, why her mistakes were learning experiences while mine were disappointments. "This is theft," I said quietly. "Grandma's will specified that money was for my education. You can't just take it." The silence that followed was deafening. Madison finally looked up from her phone, a smirk playing at the corners of her mouth. My parents exchanged a glance I'd seen 1,000 times before the one that said they'd already rehearsed this conversation. Theft is a very ugly word to use with family. My mother said, her voice taking on that dangerous edge I knew too well. "We're your parents. We make the financial decisions in this house." "I'm 18. That account was in my name. With us as custodians," my father reminded me. which means we had every right to allocate those funds where they were most needed. And frankly, Jolpe, your attitude right now is proving we made the right choice. Madison appreciates the sacrifices we make for her. Sacrifices, as if stealing my future was some noble act of parenting. I looked at my sister, waiting for her to say something, anything. She merely shrugged and returned to her phone, probably texting her boyfriend about their planned celebration dinner at the expensive steakhouse downtown. Northwestern starts in 3 weeks, I said, my voice hollow. What am I supposed to do? Community college is always an option, Mom suggested brightly. You could live at home, work part-time. In a few years, maybe you can transfer somewhere. See, there are always solutions if you're willing to work for them. The crushing weight of their betrayal settled onto my shoulders. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. They'd planned this, calculated the timing, to leave me with no options. The acceptance letter I'd framed, the dorm room supplies I'd bought with my job savings, the future I'd mapped out, all of it, crumbled to dust in that dining room. You know what the worst part is? I said, standing on shaking legs. It's not even the money. It's that you looked me in the eye every day knowing you were going to do this. You let me dream, let me plan, let me believe I mattered in this family. My father's jaw tightened. You're being dramatic. This is what's best for everyone. Everyone except me, I corrected. As I turned to leave, my mother called after me with false concern. Where are you going? We're having Madison's celebration dinner at 7. Marcello's her choice. You should come. This is a happy day for our family. I paused at the doorway, looking back at the three of them, my parents already returning to their paperwork as if they hadn't just destroyed my life. My sister scrolling through Instagram without a care in the world. A happy family celebrating one daughter's bright future with the stolen dreams of another. Grandma Rose would be ashamed of you, I said quietly. My mother's mask finally slipped, revealing a flash of genuine anger. Your grandmother isn't here, is she? We are, and we know what's best. I climbed the stairs to my room, each step feeling like a mile. Behind my closed door, I finally let the tears fall as I stared at my Northwestern acceptance letter on the wall. 3 weeks to figure out how to save my future. 3 weeks to find a way when the people who were supposed to protect me had just proven they'd sell me out for their golden child without a second thought. The truly twisted part was yet to come, because as I would soon discover, this betrayal ran deeper than I could have imagined, and the paper trail they'd left behind would reveal exactly how long they'd been planning to sacrifice my future for Madison's comfort. The next 72 hours blurred together in a desperate marathon of phone calls, emails, and crushed hopes. I'd transform my bedroom into a makeshift war room laptop open to dozens of scholarship sites, financial aid applications scattered across my desk, my phone hot from endless conversations with Northwestern's financial aid office. I'm sorry, Miss Jolpe, the financial aid counselor said for the 3rd time. Without your parents' cooperation on the FAFSA forms, we can't process any need-based aid. And since they've indicated they won't be contributing, but their income is too high for you to qualify as independent, they stole my college fund. I explained again, my voice raw from repeating the story. $85,000. Gone. I understand this is difficult, but unless you can prove abuse or abandonment through legal channels, you're still considered a dependent. Have you talked to them about co-signing private loans? That conversation had gone about as well as expected. I'd found my parents in the living room, Madison between them as they browsed Yale's course catalog on her new laptop, a pre-college gift that cost more than I'd saved from 2 years of part-time work. Absolutely not, my father had said before I'd even finished explaining. We can't risk our credit. Madison might need graduate school loans down the line. I need undergraduate loans right now, I'd pointed out. Then maybe this is the universe telling you to reconsider your path, my mother suggested. Community college really isn't that bad, sweetie. Lots of successful people started there. The doorbell interrupted what would have been my furious response. Aunt Patricia stood on our porch, her expression grim. My father's younger sister had always been the family truth teller, the one who called out uncomfortable realities at holiday dinners. "I need to talk to Jolpe," she announced, pushing past my shocked parents. "Alone." In the privacy of our backyard, Patricia revealed the depth of my parents' deception. "I've been worried about you," she began, pulling out her phone. "So I did some digging, found some interesting emails between your parents and other family members." She showed me screenshot after screenshot, messages dating back 2 years discussing the Madison situation and reallocating resources. My parents had been slowly moving money from my account into theirs, claiming they were consolidating for better interest rates. They'd told extended family that I'd agreed to help my sister, that I was so proud of Madison getting into Yale. "This one's my favorite," Patricia said bitterly, showing me an email from my mother to my grandmother's sister. "She says you insisted Madison take the money because you wanted to find your own way," written 3 months ago. 3 months ago, when I'd been excitedly planning my Northwestern dorm room with my best friend Sarah, completely oblivious to the betrayal brewing in my own home. They've been character assassinating me to the entire family. My voice came out strangled. "They knew you'd reach out for help when you discovered what they'd done," Patricia explained. "So they got ahead of it. Painted you as this independent spirit who didn't want help, while Madison was the delicate flower who needed support." "Can you help me?" I asked, hating how desperate I sounded. Patricia's face crumbled. "I wish I could, honey. But Jim just lost his job, and with 3 kids, I've got maybe $500 I could spare, but that won't make a dent in what you need." Over the following days, I reached out to every relative with the means to help. Each conversation followed the same devastating pattern. "Oh, Jolpe," my mother's cousin said, "your parents mentioned you wanted to do this on your own. I admire your independence." "That's not true," I'd insist. "They took my money without asking." An uncomfortable pause. "That's not what they told us. Are you sure there wasn't a misunderstanding?" By the 5th rejection, I understood the brilliant cruelty of my parents' strategy. They'd poisoned the well so thoroughly that I looked like either a liar trying to manipulate family for money or an ungrateful daughter backing out of a promise. My reputation in the extended family was destroyed before I'd even known I needed defending. The true scope hit me when I called my high school guidance counselor, Mrs. Chen, to ask about last-minute scholarship opportunities. "Jolpe." She sounded confused. "I thought you decided not to attend college. Your parents called last week to withdraw your applications." "They did what?" I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles went white. "They said you'd had a change of heart, wanted to take a gap year to find yourself." I was surprised, but they were very convincing. Oh dear, that wasn't true, was it? I couldn't even answer through the fury choking me. They'd been sabotaging me while I slept down the hall, while I ate dinner with them, while I still believed somewhere deep down that my parents loved me equally. That night, I confronted them one final time. Madison was out with friends, spending money that should have been paying for my textbooks. "You called my school, told them I wasn't going to college." My mother didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. "We thought it would be easier. No point in them calling about transcripts for a plan that wasn't happening. It was happening until you stole my future." There's that dramatic streak again. My father sighed. "Honestly, Jolpe, the more you react like this, the more convinced we are that Madison deserves this opportunity. She's grateful. She's composed. She represents our family well." "I represent your family failure," I shot back. "The daughter you could sacrifice without guilt." Something shifted in my mother's expression then. For just a moment, I saw the calculation behind her maternal mask. "Every family has to make hard choices, Jolpe. We chose the child with the most potential. If you can't understand that, maybe you're not as smart as those Northwestern admissions officers thought." The cruelty of it knocked the breath from my lungs. This wasn't just about money. This was about worth, about value, about my place in this family. I was the expendable one, the backup child whose dreams could be liquidated to fund the favorite's comfort. I spent my last night in that house packing everything I owned into 2 suitcases and a backpack. My parents didn't try to stop me when I announced I was leaving. "Where will you go?" my mother asked, not out of concern but curiosity. Sarah's parents said I could stay with them until I figure things out. I replied, not mentioning it was only for 2 weeks. "Well," my father said, returning his attention to the television, "when you're ready to be reasonable, you know where to find us." As I dragged my suitcases down the driveway, I turned back one last time. My childhood home looked exactly the same as always, 2-story colonial, with its perfect lawn and white picket fence. The American dream that had become my nightmare. From an upstairs window, I caught a glimpse of Madison watching me leave. She gave a little wave like she was seeing off a casual acquaintance, rather than the sister whose future she'd stolen. That small gesture, so devoid of guilt or concern, told me everything I needed to know about where I stood in this family. My phone buzzed with a text from Patricia. "Keep fighting, kiddo. They'll regret this one day." Standing at the end of that driveway, 18 years old, with nowhere to go and no money to get there, I made a promise to myself. I would find a way. Not because they believed I could, but because they believed I couldn't. And someday, when they needed me, the way I needed them now, I'd remember this moment. I'd remember how it felt to be abandoned by the people who were supposed to love me most. The August night was warm, but I shivered as I walked away from everything I'd known. In 3 days, I'd gone from college-bound with a bright future to homeless with 2 suitcases, all because my parents decided Madison's comfort mattered more than my dreams. But what they didn't understand about resourcefulness was that it was forged in desperation. They'd taken my money, poisoned my family against me, and destroyed my immediate future. What they'd given me in return was freedom from any obligation to them. They'd cut the ties that bind thinking I'd come crawling back. They thought wrong. My new reality hit me at 4:30 in the morning, when my alarm shrieked through the darkness of the basement apartment I'd found on Craigslist. The mattress on the floor was so thin I could feel every spring, and the walls were decorated with patches of black mold that the landlord insisted were just water stains. For $600 a month, I got 4 concrete walls, a toilet that ran constantly, and the pleasure of hearing my upstairs neighbors fight about money every night. I dressed in the dark to save electricity, pulling on the polyester uniform for my first job at a 24-hour diner. By 5:15, I was pouring coffee for truckers and night shift workers, my feet already aching in the cheap, non-slip shoes that were eating through my savings at minimum wage. "Order up," Kenny the cook called out, sliding plates of eggs and hash browns across the pass. I grabbed the muscle memory from 3 weeks of this routine, guiding me through the breakfast rush. "You look tired, honey," Marge, one of my regulars, commented as I refilled her coffee. She was a nurse heading home after a 12-hour shift, and she'd taken a motherly interest in me since my first day. "I'm fine." I lied, not mentioning that I'd worked until midnight at my second job stocking shelves at a grocery store, then caught 3 hours of sleep before starting this shift. By 2 in the afternoon, when the diner shift ended, I had exactly 45 minutes to scarf down a meal, half-price employee discount, the only way I could afford to eat, change clothes, and catch the bus to my third job at a call center. 8 hours of getting screamed at by angry customers about their phone bills reading from a script, while my dreams withered a little more with each hostile interaction. The call center paid slightly better than minimum wage, but the soul-crushing monotony made every hour feel like 3. During my breaks, I'd huddle in the bathroom stall and scroll through Madison's Instagram posts on my cracked phone screen. There she was at Yale's orientation week, posing in front of historic buildings in a Yale sweatshirt that probably cost more than I made in a day. Another photo showed her dorm room decorated like a Pottery Barn catalog, with a mini fridge, expensive bedding, and a laptop setup that would make any tech enthusiast weep with envy. "My amazing parents made sure I have everything I need to succeed. So blessed," her caption read, accompanied by heart emojis. The comments flooded in from family members. "So proud of you. Your parents are wonderful. Can't wait to see all you accomplish." I wanted to throw my phone against the bathroom wall. Instead, I returned to my cubicle and spent 4 more hours apologizing for service fees I didn't create to customers who saw me as nothing more than a corporate punching bag. My days blurred together in an endless cycle of exhaustion. Wake up at 4:30, work the diner until 2 call center from 3 to 11 overnight stocking at the grocery store on weekends. 7 days a week, 90-plus hours, and still barely scraping together enough for rent utilities and the ramen noodles that had become my primary food group. "You need to slow down," Sarah told me during one of our rare phone calls. "You're going to burn out." "I can't slow down," I replied, doing mental math on how many hours I needed to work to save for one community college class. "If I slow down, they win." "This isn't about winning anymore, Joe. I'm worried about you." I couldn't explain that stopping felt like drowning, that every hour not working was an hour my parents' prophecy came true. I was finding a way just like they'd said, but it was killing me slowly. The breaking point came on a particularly brutal October evening. I just finished my diner shift and was changing in the employee bathroom when my phone buzzed. A notification from our family's group chat, which I hadn't had the heart to leave yet. It was a video from my mother. Madison stood in what looked like an upscale boutique, twirling in a designer dress. "Early birthday shopping for my Yale freshman," my mother's voice chirped behind the camera. "Doesn't she look gorgeous?" Madison's birthday was still 2 weeks away. Mine had passed 3 days ago without a word from anyone in my family. I'd celebrated by treating myself to a gas station coffee instead of making instant. The next message made my blood run cold. A photo of a bright red Mini Cooper with a giant bow on top, Madison posing beside it with a squeal of delight frozen on her face. "Every Yale student needs reliable transportation. Thanks, Mom and Dad. Best birthday ever." The text was followed by a string of luxury car emojis. I did the math reflexively. That car cost more than I'd make in 6 months of destroying my body with triple shifts. The insurance alone would cover my community college tuition for a year. They'd claimed they couldn't risk their credit for my education loans, but apparently buying Madison a brand new car was a worthwhile investment. My cousin Derek had replied to the group chat, "Wow, must be nice to have supportive parents. Some of us have to work for everything." He didn't know how his casual comment twisted the knife deeper. I was working for everything had been for months, and I was nowhere closer to my goals. Meanwhile, Madison was living my dream life on my stolen money, plus whatever else my parents could throw at her. That night at the call center, I couldn't focus on the scripts. My voice cracked as I apologized to yet another angry customer, and my supervisor, Brett, pulled me aside during break. "You okay, Joelpe? You seem off tonight." "I'm fine," I said automatically. "Look," he said, lowering his voice, "I know you're pulling doubles and triples. I see you studying those coding books during lunch. Whatever you're trying to prove, you don't have to kill yourself doing it." "I'm not trying to prove anything," I snapped. "I'm trying to survive." The truth of it hit me as I said it. This wasn't living, it was barely surviving. My parents had been right about one thing. I was resourceful, but resourcefulness without resources was just another word for desperation. The mold in my apartment had gotten worse, creeping across the ceiling like a map of my failures. I developed a persistent cough that wouldn't go away, and the dark circles under my eyes had become permanent fixtures. My body was breaking down, and I was only 3 months into this new life. But the universe wasn't done with its cruel jokes. During my overnight shift at the grocery store, I was stocking the cereal aisle when I heard familiar laughter. Peeking around the corner, I saw Madison with a group of Yale friends grabbing snacks for what sounded like a dorm party. She looked radiant, well-rested, every inch the Ivy League student she'd always dreamed of being. "Oh my God," one of her friends said, loading expensive organic chips into their basket. "I would literally die if I had to work retail. Can you imagine?" "Right." Madison laughed, the sound like nails on my soul. "My sister actually works some dead-end jobs. My parents tried to help her, but she's too proud. Some people just can't accept their limitations, you know." They walked past my aisle without seeing me, their laughter echoing through the empty store. I stood there holding a box of cereal, wearing a uniform shirt with someone else's name tag, because mine hadn't come in yet, and felt something inside me crack. But it wasn't despair that flooded through the cracks. It was determination, cold and sharp as winter steel. They thought these were dead-end jobs. They thought I was accepting my limitations. They had no idea that every minimum wage hour, every degrading customer interaction, every night I fell asleep to the sound of sirens and domestic disputes was fuel for the fire they'd lit under me. I pulled out my phone during my break and opened the coding tutorial I'd been working through whenever I had 5 free minutes. My eyes burned with exhaustion, but I forced myself to focus. If I could teach myself to code, if I could build something from nothing, then I could prove what resourcefulness really looked like. 3 weeks later, fate threw me the smallest lifeline. During a rare morning when I had 2 hours between jobs, I sat in the public library using their free Wi-Fi to apply for remote freelance coding gigs. My skills were basic self-taught from YouTube videos and free online courses, but I was desperate enough to apply for anything. An email popped up that made me blink twice to make sure I wasn't hallucinating from exhaustion. A small startup was looking for someone to do basic HTML and CSS work. The pay was terrible by industry standards, but magnificent compared to minimum wage. They wanted someone who could start immediately and work flexible hours. I fired off my application with shaking fingers, attaching the portfolio website I'd built to showcase the practice projects I'd coded during every stolen moment. 3 days later, they offered me the job. It wasn't much, but it was a crack in the wall my parents had built around my future. That night, as I lay on my thin mattress staring at the moldy ceiling, I didn't see water stains anymore. I saw possibility. Madison might have Yale and a new car and designer clothes bought with my stolen dreams, but I had something she'd never have: the knowledge of what I could survive, and the certainty that I'd build something from the ashes of what they'd burned down. My phone buzzed with another family group text, a photo of my parents and Madison at an expensive steakhouse, raising glasses of wine in a toast. To our Yale student making us proud every day. I deleted the notification without opening it. I had code to write, skills to build, and a future to construct one line at a time. They'd taken my foundation, but they'd forgotten one crucial thing about building from nothing. When you start at the bottom, the only direction is up. The January wind cut through my thin coat as I hunched over my laptop in the startup's lobby, arriving an hour early for my receptionist shift to use their reliable Wi-Fi. I'd been working at TechFlow Solutions for 2 months now, juggling reception duties during the day, while desperately trying to keep up with the junior developers' conversations. My 3 previous jobs had been reduced to 2, the diner, and this after the call center finally broke what was left of my spirit. Morning Jolpay. Marcus Chen called out, breezing through the glass doors with his usual infectious energy. The company's founder was everything Silicon Valley promised: brilliant, driven, and young enough to remember what it felt like to have nothing but ambition. "Good morning, Mr. Chen," I replied quickly, minimizing my coding tutorial to pull up the calendar system. "It's Marcus, please. We're not that formal here." He paused at my desk, eyeing my screen with interest. "JavaScript fundamentals. That's pretty advanced for someone who claimed they only knew basic HTML during the interview." Heat flushed my cheeks. "I've been teaching myself. I hope that's okay. I use my breaks and lunch hour." "Okay," he grinned. "It's fantastic. Keep it up." The morning passed in its usual blur of phone calls, package deliveries, and scheduling meetings. But around 11, raised voices erupted from the development room. Through the glass walls, I could see the entire tech team clustered around a whiteboard, gesticulating wildly. "It's impossible with our current architecture," James, the lead developer, was saying. "We'd need to completely rebuild the authentication system." "We don't have time for a rebuild," another developer argued. "The client demo is tomorrow." I tried to focus on organizing the supply closet, but their technical discussion kept pulling my attention. They were struggling with a user authentication problem I'd encountered in one of my late-night coding tutorials just last week. The solution had taken me hours to understand, but it was surprisingly elegant once it clicked. By lunch, the team looked defeated. Marcus stood at the whiteboard, running his hands through his hair in frustration. The demo was crucial, potentially worth millions in funding. I should have kept quiet, should have stayed in my lane as the receptionist who answered phones and ordered lunch. But watching brilliant people struggle with something I'd accidentally learned made my fingers itch. During my lunch break, while they were out grabbing sandwiches, I slipped into the empty development room. Their code was still displayed on the main monitor, and I could see the exact issue that had stumped me during my tutorial. My hands moved almost without thinking, opening a new terminal window and typing out the solution I'd discovered. "What are you doing?" I spun around to find Marcus standing in the doorway, his expression unreadable. My heart plummeted to my stomach. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have touched anything. I just thought... I recognized the problem from a tutorial I did, and I knew how to fix it, but I should have asked first, and..." Jolpe. He held up a hand, walking closer to examine my screen. Did you just solve our authentication issue? Maybe... I squeaked. I had the same problem when I was building a practice project last week. The token refresh was failing because the middleware wasn't properly async. See if you await the verification here and restructure the promise chain. I explained the solution, my nervousness fading as I fell into the familiar rhythm of code logic. Marcus listened intently, occasionally asking questions that showed he understood exactly what I was proposing. "How long have you been coding?" he asked when I finished. "About 6 months," I admitted. "Just online tutorials and free courses. I practice whenever I can." 6 months? He shook his head in amazement. "James has been coding for 6 years and he missed this." The development team returned from lunch to find Marcus implementing my solution. There was a moment of tension when they realized the receptionist had solved their crisis, but it evaporated when the fix worked perfectly. "Where did you learn this?" James asked, professional curiosity overcoming any wounded pride. "YouTube University," I said with a self-deprecating laugh, and a lot of Stack Overflow. That afternoon, Marcus called me into his office. The space was typical startup chic beanbag chairs, a ping-pong table, and whiteboards covered in ambitious diagrams. "Tell me your story," he said, gesturing for me to sit. "The real one. Because someone who teaches themselves to code while working as a receptionist has a story." So I told him everything. The stolen college fund, the family betrayal, the months of working myself to exhaustion. I expected pity or the awkward discomfort people usually showed when confronted with family dysfunction. Instead, Marcus leaned back in his chair with a knowing look. "My parents wanted me to be a doctor," he said. "When I dropped out of pre-med to start my first company, they told the entire extended family I was wasting my potential. Sound familiar? Did they ever come around after my second company sold for 8 figures? His smile was wry. Money has a way of validating choices parents don't understand. But here's the thing, Jolpe. You're trying to code your way out of poverty while exhausted and malnourished. It's admirable, but it's also inefficient." "It's the only option I have," I said defensively. "No, it's not." He leaned forward, his expression serious. "I'm going to make you an offer. There's a coding boot camp starting next month. Intensive program, 12 weeks, designed to turn motivated people into job-ready developers. I'll pay for it, plus a living stipend, so you can quit that diner job and focus on learning." The room spun slightly. "Why would you do that?" "Because you solved in 5 minutes what my team couldn't fix in 3 hours. Because you're teaching yourself to code on a broken laptop in a moldy apartment. Because I see myself in you, and someone gave me a chance once too." He paused. "There's a catch, though. After you complete the program, you work for me for 2 years. Junior developer salary, which will be triple what you're making now, even at entry level." "That's not a catch," I whispered. "That's a miracle." "It's an investment," he corrected. "I'm betting on your potential. Deal?" I couldn't speak through the tears threatening to spill, so I just nodded. He slid a written offer across the desk, making it official. "There's one more thing," he said as I shakily signed my name. "You'll need to background check for the boot camp. Is there anything I should know about—" My stomach dropped. "My parents." They might say things. They've been telling people I'm unstable, that I'm difficult. They tried to sabotage opportunities before. Marcus's expression darkened. They tried to sabotage their own daughter's future. They already did once, I reminded him. Taking the money was just the start. He was quiet for a moment, then picked up his phone. "Hey, Rachel, can you come to my office and bring the file on those character assassination attempts we dealt with last year?" He looked at me. "My head of HR dealt with something similar. We know how to handle toxic families." Rachel turned out to be a force of nature in designer heels, taking notes as I explained my parents' pattern of interference. "I'll handle any reference calls personally," she assured me. "We've seen this before, parents who can't stand their children succeeding without them." 2 days later, my worst fears materialized. I was filing invoices when the main line rang. "TechFlow Solutions, this is Joel Pei. I need to speak with Marcus Chen immediately." My mother's voice sharp with barely contained fury. "Tell him Sandra Williams is calling about my daughter." My hand trembled as I put her on hold and buzzed Marcus. "My mother is on line 1. Conference room B," he said immediately. "Bring Rachel. Let's hear what she has to say." We listened on speaker as my mother spun her web of lies. I was unstable, she claimed, prone to stealing and lying. She was calling out of concern, worried I might harm the company. "Mrs. Williams," Marcus interrupted smoothly, "I appreciate your concern, but I have to ask, why are you really calling? Your daughter has been exemplary in her work here." "She's manipulative," my mother insisted. "She'll tell you sob stories about her family, but we've done everything for her. She chose to leave college, chose to work minimum wage jobs. We offered to help, but she's too proud." "Interesting." Marcus's voice was deadly calm. "Because I have documentation here showing you emptied her college account. Would you like to explain that?" The silence stretched so long I wondered if she'd hung up. Finally, "That's a family matter." "No, it's theft," Rachel interjected. "And interfering with her employment could be considered harassment. Should we involve our legal team?" The call ended with my mother sputtering threats about lawsuits and family loyalty. Marcus looked at me with something between sympathy and anger. "She really tried to destroy your job opportunity because she found out you were succeeding. She can't stand that I'm proving her wrong," I said quietly. "If I succeed without them, it means they were wrong to write me off. It's easier to sabotage me than admit they made a mistake." Rachel documented everything, creating a paper trail in case my parents escalated. But something shifted in Marcus after that call. He became not just a boss offering opportunity, but a mentor determined to see me succeed despite the obstacles my own family threw in my path. "You know what the best revenge is?" he asked as we left the conference room. "Success." "Success they can't take credit for," he corrected. "Success that happens despite their best efforts to prevent it. Success that proves every word they said about you was a lie." The boot camp started in 3 weeks. For the first time in months, I had hope that burned brighter than the hurt. My parents had stolen my first chance at a future, but they'd inadvertently pushed me towards something potentially better. Traditional college would have given me debt and a degree. This path would give me skills and a mentor who understood that sometimes the family you choose matters more than the family you're born into. That night, I gave notice at the diner, packed my few belongings, and used my first stipend payment to move into a small but clean studio apartment near the boot camp location. No mold on the walls, no sirens all night, no constant reminder of how far I'd fallen. As I lay in my new bed, a real bed with an actual frame, my phone buzzed with a text from Madison. "Heard you're playing secretary now. Mom says you're embarrassing the family. At least I'm making them proud at Yale." I deleted the message without responding. In 12 weeks, I wouldn't be a secretary anymore. I'd be a developer. And somewhere in that transformation, I'd stop being the daughter they could sacrifice and start being the woman who built herself from scratch. Marcus was right about revenge. The best kind wasn't served cold. It was served through code one function at a time. The boot camp transformed me from a desperate self-taught coder into a legitimate developer. 12 weeks of intensive training fueled by proper nutrition and adequate sleep for the first time in months unlocked potential I didn't know existed. My instructors were amazed at my progress, not realizing that when you've spent months coding on a broken laptop between minimum wage shifts, having dedicated time to learn felt like breathing after drowning. By graduation day, I'd built 3 full-stack applications and caught the attention of several hiring managers who attended our demo day. But I'd made a promise to Marcus, and I intended to keep it. The morning I started as a junior developer at TechFlow, earning more in a month than I'd previously made in 3, I finally felt like I could exhale. The work was challenging but exhilarating. I threw myself into every project staying late, not because I had to, but because I wanted to absorb everything. My teammates, who'd witnessed my evolution from receptionist to developer, became my biggest champions. James, who could have resented being shown up instead, became a mentor teaching me architectural patterns that weren't covered in boot camp. 6 months into my new role, everything changed during a company hackathon. The theme was solving daily frustrations. And while others built apps for finding parking or splitting bills, I coded through the night on something personal. My app Fair Share was designed to help young adults track and document financial abuse within families, creating legal records of stolen education funds, inheritance theft, and parental financial manipulation. "This is brilliant," Marcus said as I demonstrated the features. "But it's also very specific, personal experience." You could say that I admitted showing him the inheritance tracking feature that would have saved me if I'd had it years ago. The panel of judges, including 2 venture capitalists Marcus had invited, were intrigued. One of them, Patricia Kumar, pulled me aside after the presentations. "This addresses a real gap in the market," she said. "Elder financial abuse gets attention, but young adult financial abuse by parents is barely acknowledged. Do you have data on the market size?" I didn't, but I spent the next week researching. The numbers were staggering. Millions of young adults experience financial manipulation by family members, but there were few resources to help them document it or seek recourse. Within a month, Patricia's firm offered seed funding of $500,000 to develop Fair Share into a full platform. Marcus not only gave his blessing, but offered to be an advisor. "Your 2-year commitment is to work for me," he said. "Doesn't mean you can't build something on the side. Just remember us when you're running a unicorn." The irony wasn't lost on me that my family's betrayal had inspired something that could help others. I worked on Fair Share during evenings and weekends, careful not to let it interfere with my TechFlow responsibilities. The app launched in beta 3 months later to overwhelming response. Within the first week, we had 10,000 downloads and hundreds of stories that mirrored my own. That's when Madison reached out. Her text came on a Tuesday evening while I was reviewing user feedback. "Hey sis, long time no talk. Wondering if you could help me out with something." I stared at the message, my first direct contact from her in over 2 years. Against my better judgment, I responded, "What do you need?" "Can we meet for coffee? I'm in the city for the weekend." Every instinct screamed no, but curiosity won. We met at a neutral location, a busy cafe where she couldn't cause a scene. The Madison who walked in looked different from her Instagram posts. The designer clothes were still there, but her face carried a stress I'd never seen before. "You look good," she said, eyeing my professional attire with surprise. "Mom said you were struggling." "Mom says a lot of things," I replied evenly. "What do you need, Madison?" She fidgeted with her Yale class ring, a gesture so uncharacteristically nervous it set off alarm bells. "I need a loan, just temporarily. $20,000 should cover it." I nearly choked on my coffee. $20,000 for what? "Expenses," she said vaguely. "Yale is more expensive than we planned. Mom and Dad are tapped out with the mortgage and my car payments. I thought since you're doing okay now..." "I'm doing okay because I worked 3 jobs and taught myself to code after you all stole my future," I said quietly. "Why would I give you money?" Her mask slipped, revealing something desperate underneath. "Because I'm your sister. Because family helps family. Like you helped me when they emptied my college fund." "That wasn't my fault," she snapped. I was 16. What was I supposed to do? You were old enough to go to Yale, but not old enough to have a conscience. I pulled out my phone and showed her the FareShare app. I built this because of what our family did to me. It helps people document financial abuse. Funny thing is, half our users are dealing with siblings who got preferential treatment and then came back asking for more. Madison's face went pale. You're making money off our family drama. I'm helping people who were betrayed like I was. And no, I won't give you $20,000 or $20. You made your choice when you took that money knowing it was mine. I'll tell Mom and Dad about your little app, she threatened. They'll sue you for defamation. Go ahead, I said, standing to leave. My lawyer would love to depose them about the theft. We have all the documentation now, including Grandma's will and the bank records showing how they moved the money. But as I walked to the door, she called out something that made me pause. I'm on academic probation. If I don't pay for a summer program to boost my GPA, I'll lose my scholarship. They don't know. They think I'm doing perfectly. I turned back to see tears streaming down her face, and for a moment I saw my sister instead of my betrayer. Then I remembered her laughing with her friends about my dead-end jobs, and the sympathy evaporated. Maybe you should have studied harder instead of posting Instagram stories from parties, I said. You'll find a way. You're resourceful, right? The echo of our mother's words hung between us. Madison flinched as if I'd slapped her, finally understanding what it felt like to have family turn their backs when you needed them most. I left her there and went back to my life, but the encounter disturbed something I'd thought was settled. That night, I dove into FareShare's data reading story after story of golden children who eventually faced consequences when the parental money ran dry. The pattern was consistent: years of entitlement followed by spectacular falls when reality hit. 2 weeks later, my suspicions were confirmed when a user posted about discovering their sibling had been lying to their parents about academic performance while spending tuition money on lifestyle maintenance. The details were too specific to be coincidence. Madison was living a double life, and the facade was cracking. My phone rang at midnight. Mom. What did you say to your sister? She demanded without preamble. She's been crying for days. I told her I wouldn't give her money, I replied. The same way you told me to find my own way. This is different. She's maintaining excellence at Yale. You were just going to a state school. Northwestern isn't a state school, Mom, and Madison isn't maintaining excellence. She's on academic probation. The silence stretched so long, I checked to make sure the call hadn't dropped. Finally, you're lying. Madison would never lie to us. Like you never lied to the family about me agreeing to give her my college fund. How dare you? How dare you call me at midnight demanding money for the child you chose over me? I kept my voice calm despite the anger burning in my chest. Madison made her bed with my stolen sheets. Now she can lie in it. When did you become so cruel? My mother whispered. I learned from the best, I said and hung up. The family group chat exploded over the following days. Messages flew about my selfishness, my cruelty to poor Madison who was struggling to maintain perfection. I watched it all unfold without responding, screenshotting everything for potential legal documentation. But the real vindication came a month later when the truth emerged. Madison had been lying for over a year, maintaining an elaborate deception about her grades, while spiraling into shopping addiction and party culture. The $20,000 she'd asked me for wasn't for a summer program. It was to pay off credit card debt she'd hidden from our parents. The family narrative shifted overnight. The golden child had tarnished, and suddenly everyone remembered how poor Joel had been treated. Aunt Patricia called to say she was proud of me for standing firm. Cousins who'd believed my parents' lies reached out with apologies. I accepted none of it. They'd shown me who they were when it mattered, and I wouldn't forget just because the family dynamic had shifted. Meanwhile, FareShare hit 100,000 downloads. Patricia Kumar's firm committed to a Series A round of $2 million. Tech reporters started calling, wanting to hear the story behind the app. I declined most interviews, but agreed to one podcast about financial abuse within families. The hardest part, I told the host, is that society expects you to forgive because they're family, but family should be held to a higher standard, not a lower one. They're supposed to protect you, not prey on you. The episode went viral. My inbox flooded with stories from people who'd experienced similar betrayals. We hired 2 developers and a community manager to handle the growth. What had started as a hackathon project born from pain was becoming a movement. Madison texted once more, "I hope you're happy you've destroyed our family." I didn't respond, but I thought about it that night as I reviewed code in my comfortable apartment, my bank account healthy, my future secure. I hadn't destroyed our family. I'd simply refused to be destroyed by it. The app notification pinged another user had successfully documented financial abuse and secured legal protection for their remaining assets. Each success story healed something in me, proof that my pain had purpose. My parents had been right about one thing. I was resourceful, but they'd been wrong about everything else. My success wasn't despite them taking my college fund. It was because they'd shown me early that I could only count on myself, and that knowledge had become my superpower. As I pushed the latest update to production, I thought about Madison struggling at Yale, our parents facing the reality that their golden child was brass underneath. They'd bet everything on the wrong daughter, and now they were learning what I'd known all along. Sometimes the best revenge isn't served at all. Sometimes it's built, coded, and deployed to help others avoid your fate. And sometimes, just sometimes, the universe ensures the people who wronged you get to watch your rise while experiencing their own fall. Success they couldn't take credit for. Success they'd tried to prevent. Success that proved every word they'd said about me was a lie. Marcus had been right about everything. The morning fair share officially launched, changed everything. I woke to my phone buzzing incessantly. Not my alarm, but notification after notification. Downloads were pouring in at a rate that crashed our servers twice before noon. Marcus, who'd become my closest advisor, called an emergency meeting at TechFlow to lend us their backup infrastructure. "Holy hell, Joel Pay!" James whistled, watching the real-time analytics. "You're trending on every major platform. #1 in the finance category, #3 overall." TechCrunch had picked up the story, then the Wall Street Journal. By evening, CNN wanted an interview. The narrative was irresistible young woman turns family betrayal into million-dollar startup helping others. Patricia Kumar worked her media connections, ensuring the story stayed focused on the mission rather than becoming exploitative gossip about my family. Within 72 hours, we'd hit 500,000 downloads, and our servers groaned under the weight of user testimonials. I hired 5 more developers on the spot, drawing from Marcus's network of talented engineers. The Series A funding let me offer competitive salaries, and suddenly I was running a real company, not just a side project. That's when things got complicated. Joel Pay Williams. A process server found me at the TechFlow office handing over legal documents with the apologetic expression, "You've been served." My hands trembled as I read the paperwork. My parents were suing me for defamation, claiming FairShare was built on lies about our family. They wanted damages of $5 million, essentially everything the company had raised and more. "They can't be serious," Rachel said, reading over my shoulder. She'd become something of a protective older sister figure since handling my mother's harassment calls. But they were deadly serious. The lawsuit claimed I'd stolen family stories for profit, that I'd exaggerated their actions, that the entire app was a vindictive attack on loving parents who'd only tried to help both daughters equally. Marcus immediately connected me with Sharon Patel, one of Silicon Valley's most feared litigation attorneys. She reviewed the case with the kind of predatory smile that made me grateful she was on my side. "This is what we call a slap suit," she explained. "Strategic lawsuit against public participation. They're trying to silence you with legal costs. Unfortunately for them, California has excellent anti-slap statutes, and you have something even better." What's that? The truth, and documentation to prove it. The legal filing became public record, which meant journalists could access it. My parents had miscalculated spectacularly. Instead of silencing the story, they'd added fuel to it. Fair share. Your story began trending as users rallied around the platform, sharing their own experiences with financial abuse. But my parents weren't done. They appeared on a morning talk show presenting themselves as heartbroken parents whose ungrateful daughter had twisted family sacrifices into a profit scheme. My mother cried on cue, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue, while my father held her hand supportively. "We gave both our daughters everything," my mother told the sympathetic host. "Yes, we had to make hard choices when Madison got into Yale, but Joel Pay agreed to it. She said she wanted her sister to have the best opportunities. Now she's built this app on lies, making millions while destroying our reputation." The host nodded sympathetically, clearly buying their performance. "And what about the allegation that you emptied her college fund without permission?" "There was no fund specifically for her." My father lied smoothly. "It was family money that we allocated where it was most needed. Joel Pay could have gone to community college and transferred. Instead, she chose to drop out and work minimum wage jobs to punish us." I watched from my office, surrounded by my team who'd gathered in silent support. The lies flowed so easily from their mouths, I almost believed them myself. They'd rewritten history so thoroughly in their minds that they probably believed their own version. "Should we respond?" my head of communications asked. "Not yet," Sharon advised over speakerphone. "Let them hang themselves. We'll present our evidence in court, not the media." But we didn't have to wait for court. That afternoon, Aunt Patricia did something extraordinary. She went on social media with screenshots of every email, every text, every family group chat message from the past 3 years. The conspiracy to hide the theft, the character assassination, the deliberate sabotage, all of it laid bare for the world to see. "I've stayed silent too long," her post read. "Watching my brother and sister-in-law destroy one daughter to prop up another has haunted me. Here's the truth they don't want you to see." The internet did what it does best: investigate. Within hours, people had found Madison's Yale academic record public due to a database breach showing her suspension for academic dishonesty. They found the mortgage documents showing my parents' house in foreclosure. They found Madison's abandoned fashion blog where she'd bragged about spending daddy's money on designer goods while I was working 3 jobs. My phone rang. Madison. "You need to stop this," she said without preamble. "The internet is destroying me. I can't get a job anywhere. Everyone knows who I am now." "I didn't start this," I reminded her. "Mom and Dad did when they sued me. They're just trying to protect the family." "What family?" I asked. "The one where they stole my inheritance. The one where you laughed about my dead-end jobs with your Yale friends. That family—" "I was young and stupid," she pleaded. "Haven't I been punished enough? I lost everything. Yale expelled me officially yesterday because of the media attention. My trust fund is gone because Mom and Dad spent it on lawyers. I'm working at a coffee shop and living with 4 roommates." For a moment, silence stretched between us. I thought about how she'd lived my life for a few months and crumbled while I'd lived it for years and built an empire. "Madison," I said finally, "you're experiencing consequences, not punishment. There's a difference." "So you won't help me?" "I'll help you the same way you helped me when I begged you to speak up about the stolen money. The same way you helped when you knew Mom was calling my employers. The same way you helped when you had everything and I had nothing." "I get it," she said bitterly. "You want me to suffer." "No," I corrected. "I want you to grow, and growth hurts. Trust me, I know." She hung up, but not before I heard her sob. Part of me, the part that remembered teaching her to ride a bike and braiding her hair for school, ached. But the larger part, the part that had survived on ramen and determination, stayed firm. The lawsuit moved forward at legal speed, which meant slowly. During depositions, my parents' lies unraveled thread by thread. When presented with bank records showing the trust fund withdrawal, they claimed it was a misunderstanding. When shown emails plotting to prevent family members from helping me, they insisted they were protecting me from becoming dependent on others. The most damning evidence came from an unexpected source. My grandmother's estate attorney, Richard Bowman, had been following the news. He reached out to Sharon with a bombshell. "Your grandmother suspected this might happen," he told me during a meeting. "She actually recorded a video message for you to be released if there was ever a dispute about the inheritance. She wanted to ensure her wishes were clear." I watched my grandmother's face appear on his laptop screen, and tears immediately blurred my vision. She looked exactly as I remembered. Silver hair, pinned back, sharp eyes that missed nothing, wearing her favorite pearl necklace. "My dearest Jolpe," her recorded voice began, "if you're watching this, it means your parents have done what I feared they might. I've watched them favor Madison since she was born, watched them dim your light to make hers shine brighter. The money I'm leaving is for your education and your education alone. I've made this video because I know your parents will try to take it, and I need you to know, fight them. You deserve every opportunity, my dear one. Don't let them steal your future." The video was legally admissible and destroyed my parents' claim that I'd misunderstood the fund's purpose. But more than that, it gave me something I desperately needed: validation that someone in my family had seen the truth and loved me enough to protect me, even from beyond the grave. Sharon used the video as leverage to force a settlement. My parents, facing perjury charges and public humiliation, agreed to drop the lawsuit in exchange for me not pursuing criminal theft charges. They also had to sign a document admitting they'd taken money designated for my education and used it for Madison, effectively vindicating everything I'd said publicly. The day the settlement was signed, FairShare hit 1 million downloads. We announced our Series B funding of $10 million with Patricia Kumar's firm, leading the round again. Major financial institutions reached out about partnerships. Universities wanted to include our resources in their financial aid offices. But the sweetest moment came when Forbes reached out for a feature. They wanted to include me in their 30 under 30 list, with a full profile about turning pain into purpose. From stolen dreams to Silicon Valley success, the headline would read. They wanted to do a photo shoot at the TechFlow offices where it all began. That night, I sat in my apartment. My new apartment, a beautiful 2-bedroom in a building with actual amenities and no mold, reading through user testimonials. Thousands of young adults had used FairShare to document financial abuse, protect their assets, and build cases for independence. We'd partnered with pro bono lawyers to help users seeking legal remedy. We'd created scholarship funds for those whose education money had been stolen. Every success story healed another piece of my broken trust in humanity. We weren't just building an app. We were building a movement that said family didn't give you the right to financially abuse someone. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Proud of you, kid. You didn't just find a way. You built a highway for others to follow." I thought about my parents probably watching the Forbes announcement from their downsized apartment, facing bankruptcy from legal fees. I thought about Madison learning the harsh lessons of adulthood without a safety net. I thought about myself at 18, scared and alone with 2 suitcases and no money. That girl could never have imagined this moment, but she'd fought for it anyway, one line of code at a time, one 16-hour day at a time, one small victory at a time. My parents had been wrong about so much, but they'd been right about one thing: I did find a way. Just not the way they'd expected. The foreclosure notice appeared in my news feed before my parents told anyone in the family. A local news site had published the listing, "Prominent Williams family home in foreclosure after failed business ventures." The accompanying photo showed the colonial house where I'd grown up, a red "foreclosure" sign staked in that perfectly manicured lawn my father had obsessed over. I was reviewing code when Patricia Kumar forwarded the article with a single line, "Your parents just gave us incredible PR for the Series B announcement." She wasn't wrong. The timing was poetic. My success, rising as theirs, crashed down. But staring at that photo, I felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not sadness, just a hollow acknowledgement that consequences had finally caught up with them. Then Madison's call shattered my morning peace. "Are you happy now?" She was crying so hard I could barely understand her. They're losing the house because of your stupid lawsuit. We're going to be homeless. They're losing the house because they took out a second mortgage to fund your Yale lifestyle. I corrected, pulling up my documentation. The lawsuit they filed just accelerated what was already happening. You don't understand. I never graduated, Joe. I haven't been at Yale for a year. I set down my coffee carefully. Explain. The story tumbled out between sobs. Madison had been expelled for plagiarism in her junior year. Not just one paper, but a systematic pattern of buying essays online. The academic probation had been her last chance, and she'd blown it. But instead of telling our parents, she'd maintained an elaborate lie complete with fake grade reports and staged photos with friends who were still enrolled. I used the tuition money they kept sending to maintain appearances, she admitted. Rent for an apartment near campus clothes to look the part, trips to make my Instagram look right. I thought if I could just fake it until I figured out another plan. You spent a year's worth of Yale tuition on maintaining a lie. I couldn't hide my disbelief. It was more than tuition, she wailed. They gave me everything. Credit cards for educational expenses, money for study abroad programs I never went on. I even hired someone to create a fake Yale transcript when they asked to see my grades. The scam was breathtaking in its audacity. While I'd been sleeping on a mattress on the floor, she'd been spending 6 figures to avoid admitting failure. Why didn't you just tell them the truth? Are you kidding? I'm the golden child. Remember, the special one who needed Yale to reach her potential. How could I tell them their investment was worthless, that I'm just as much of a failure as me? I finished coldly. That's not what I meant. Yes, it is. And that's exactly why you couldn't tell them. Because in their eyes, there was only room for one failure in this family, and that spot was already taken. But the true explosion came that evening when the full story broke. An investigative journalist had been digging into my family since the lawsuit became public. They discovered the web of lies through public records and social media forensics. The headline was brutal. Yale scandal: Williams family spent stolen college fund on daughter's fake education. The article detailed everything: the forged transcripts, the elaborate deception, the fact that my parents had been showing off their Yale graduate daughter at family events for months after her expulsion. Screenshots showed Madison at fake graduation ceremonies, my parents' proud Facebook posts about their Ivy League daughter, the thousands of dollars flowing toward an education that didn't exist. My phone exploded with family group chat notifications. Relatives who'd sneered at my jealousy were now demanding answers. The aunt who'd refused to help me because I was too proud was raging about being deceived. The cousins who'd believed I was selfish were sharing the article with shock emojis. But the real bomb dropped when the journalist reached out to me for comment and mentioned something chilling. Did you know your parents listed you as a co-signer on some of these debts? Sharon Patel earned every penny of her retainer that night. We discovered my parents had forged my signature on multiple loan documents, using my newfound success as collateral. They'd told lenders I was their business partner in several failed ventures, a restaurant that never opened, a real estate flip that went bankrupt, an investment in Madison's startup that was actually just shopping sprees. This is identity theft, Sharon said grimly, and fraud, and about 6 other felonies. They didn't just steal your college fund. They've been stealing your identity to fund their lifestyle. The FBI's Financial Crimes Unit got involved the next day. Suddenly, this wasn't just a family dispute, but a federal investigation. Agents showed up at my office to take my statement, and I had to relive every moment of betrayal, while they took notes. Your parents seem to have a pattern, Agent Chen observed, reviewing the evidence. Take from you to give to Madison, then use your success to justify more taking. It's pathological. Madison called again that night, hysterical. The FBI came to my apartment. They froze all my accounts. I can't even buy groceries. Those accounts were funded with stolen money, I pointed out. I didn't know. You knew the tuition money was for Yale. You knew you weren't attending Yale. What did you think would happen? I thought I'd figure something out. She was spiraling. Get a job, pay them back slowly. I didn't think it would all come crashing down like this. That's the thing about lies, Madison. They always crash eventually. Help me, she begged. Please, I'll do anything. I'll testify against them. I'll admit everything. Just don't let me go to jail. I consulted with Sharon, who confirmed Madison's cooperation could help our case. But there were conditions. Full honesty, I told her. Every lie, every deception, every cruel thing you did while spending my money. You admit it all publicly and work with the FBI. Everyone will hate me, she whispered. Everyone already hates you, I said bluntly. This is about saving yourself from prison. The family meeting that weekend was a massacre. Aunt Patricia hosted at her house, and every branch of the Williams family tree showed up demanding answers. My parents, looking haggard and decade older, tried to spin one last story. We were trying to protect the family's reputation, my mother insisted. If people knew Madison had failed, it would reflect poorly on all of us. So you stole from Joel Pay to pay for a fake education? Uncle Dennis asked incredulously. We didn't steal, my father roared. We reallocated family resources. You committed fraud, Patricia corrected coldly. You forged signatures. You lied to lenders. You destroyed one daughter to prop up a fantasy about the other. The room erupted. Years of buried resentment surfaced. Other relatives admitted my parents had borrowed money they'd never returned, always with promises that Madison's future Yale success would enable repayment. The family's financial web of deceit went deeper than anyone had realized. Madison sat in the corner, silent for once, her designer clothes looking like costume pieces now that everyone knew they'd been bought with blood money. Mine. I need everyone to know something, she finally said, voice barely above a whisper. I knew they emptied Joe's account. I was there when they discussed it. Mom said Joe was strong enough to handle disappointment, but I needed protection. I laughed. I actually laughed when Dad said she'd probably thank us one day for teaching her resilience. The confession sucked the air from the room. Even I hadn't known she'd been party to the planning. You watched them steal my future and laughed. I asked, my voice deadly calm. I was 16. I was selfish and stupid, and I believed them when they said you didn't really need it. She was sobbing now, mascara streaming down her face. They'd spent my whole life telling me I was special, that I deserved the best. I thought that meant I deserved it more than you. And now, Patricia asked sharply. Now I know I didn't deserve any of it. I'm 23 years old with a fake Yale transcript, real debt I can't pay, and skills in nothing except lying and shopping. She looked at me directly for the first time. You were right at the coffee shop. This isn't punishment. It's consequences, and I earned every bit of it. The meeting ended with the family collectively cutting off my parents. Cousins who'd loaned them money demanded repayment. Aunts who'd been told I was difficult apologized to me. The family story had been rewritten with the truth, and my parents found themselves the villains of their own narrative. But the cruelest cut came from Madison herself. Under FBI pressure and facing fraud charges, she agreed to testify against our parents in exchange for immunity. She provided investigators with recorded conversations where they'd coached her to lie documents showing they knew about her expulsion evidence of their systematic financial crimes beyond what they'd done to me. The last time I saw my parents as a family unit was at their arraignment. They stood before a federal judge charged with identity theft, wire fraud, and conspiracy. Their lawyer argued for bail, claiming they weren't flight risks. Your Honor, the prosecutor countered, they've already proven they'll sacrifice their own children for money. They're the very definition of flight risks. Bail was set at $1 million each. They couldn't make it. As they were led away in handcuffs, my mother caught my eye. For just a moment, her mask completely dropped. The look she gave me wasn't anger or sadness or even regret. It was pure bewilderment, like she genuinely couldn't understand how I'd escaped the role they'd assigned me. I understood then that in their minds I'd always been the sacrifice. Not a daughter, not a person with dreams, just collateral damage in their pursuit of creating the perfect golden child. My success didn't compute because sacrifices weren't supposed to rise from the ashes. Outside the courthouse, Madison waited by my car. She looked smaller somehow, her designer armor traded for jeans and a simple sweater. "I know you hate me," she started. "I don't hate you," I interrupted. "Hate requires energy I don't want to waste on you." "I'm going to make this right," she said. "I don't know how, but I'll figure it out. I'll get a real job, go to community college, build something honest. Maybe someday I can be someone you're not ashamed to call sister." I studied her for a long moment, searching for the entitled girl who'd laughed while they planned my destruction. She was still there, buried under layers of consequence and regret, but something else was emerging too. Maybe humility, maybe possibility. "Focus on being someone you're not ashamed to be," I advised. "The rest will follow, or it won't." I drove away, leaving her standing in the parking lot. In my rearview mirror, I watched her grow smaller until she disappeared, entirely a metaphor for our entire relationship. That night, Fair Share hit 2 million downloads. My team celebrated with champagne while I sat in my office staring at the Forbes 30 Under 30 announcement that would go live the next morning. The girl in the professional headshot looked confident, successful, whole. Nothing like the broken 18-year-old who'd left home with 2 suitcases. The Williams family had exploded, detonated by the very people who'd claimed to be protecting it. From the ashes, I'd built an empire. Madison might build character. My parents would build a criminal record. And somewhere Grandma Rose was probably laughing at the poetic justice of it all. The golden child had turned to lead, the sacrifice had become a phoenix, and the family built on lies had collapsed under the weight of truth. The federal courthouse in downtown San Francisco became my second home over the next 6 months. Sharon Patel had assembled a legal team that moved like a special forces unit, systematically dismantling every lie my parents had constructed over the years. But the real shock came when we discovered just how deep their fraudulent activities went. "Jolpe, you need to see this," Sharon said during one of our morning strategy sessions, sliding a stack of documents across her conference table. Discovery turned up something unexpected. I scanned the papers, my coffee growing cold as the scope became clear. My parents hadn't just stolen from me or committed fraud in my name. They'd created an entire network of financial crimes, spanning 5 years. Fake business partnerships, forged documents, loan applications listing fictional assets. And at the center of it all, my name appeared again and again. They used my acceptance to Northwestern as collateral for a business loan. I read in disbelief. "That's just the beginning. Look at page 47. I flipped through and found myself staring at a life insurance policy taken out in my name, with my parents as beneficiaries. The premium payments had stopped when I left home, but the intent was chilling. "They were betting against me," I whispered. "Or planning for multiple contingencies," Sharon said grimly. "The FBI thinks this goes beyond simple fraud. There's a pattern here of treating you as a financial asset to be leveraged." The first day of depositions arrived with unexpected drama. Madison showed up wearing a simple black suit, her Yale party girl persona completely abandoned. She'd been working with the prosecution for months, and the transformation was striking. Gone was the entitled princess who'd spent my college fund on designer handbags. In her place stood someone who looked exhausted by truth. My parents' attorney, a slick corporate lawyer they definitely couldn't afford, tried to paint Madison as an unreliable witness. "Isn't it true, Miss Williams, that you lied to your parents for over a year about attending Yale?" "Yes," Madison answered clearly. "And isn't it true that you created elaborate deceptions, including fake transcripts?" "Yes." "So why should anyone believe you now?" Madison straightened in her chair. "Because lying destroyed my life. Because I watched my parents destroy my sister's future and said nothing. Because the truth is, the only thing I have left that's worth anything." Her testimony was devastating. She'd kept recordings of conversations where our parents coached her on maintaining the Yale lie. She had emails where they discussed using my success with Fair Share to secure more loans. Most damning, she had a video from a family dinner where they'd laughed about how I was too proud to ever discover their ongoing identity theft. Play the video, the prosecutor instructed. The conference room screen lit up with footage from someone's phone. My parents sat at their dining room table, the same one where they'd announced stealing my college fund. Madison's voice came from behind the camera. "Joe's company is worth how much now?" My mother was asking, wine glass in hand. "The latest funding round valued it at $50 million. My father replied, scrolling through his phone. "We could probably get approved for that expansion loan now. List her as a silent partner." "She'll never know." My mother laughed. "Too busy playing CEO to check every little document. Besides, we're her parents. We have every right to benefit from our investment in her." "What investment?" Madison's recorded voice asked. "We made her strong," my father said without irony. "That struggle we put her through. That's what built her character. Really, she owes us for creating the adversity that made her successful." The room went silent as the video ended. Even my parents' attorney looked uncomfortable. The prosecution's psychiatrist expert witness would later testify that this represented a classic narcissistic reframing, taking credit for the success that emerged despite their abuse, not because of it. When it was my turn to testify, I came armed with 3 years of documentation. Bank records, emails, text messages, recordings, everything FairShare had taught users to collect I'd been gathering since the day I left home. The jury saw it all: the systematic theft, the character assassination, the deliberate sabotage of opportunities. "Let me understand," the prosecutor said for emphasis. "Your parents stole your college fund, used your identity for fraud, attempted to destroy your employment opportunities, and then sued you for defamation when you became successful." "That's correct," I confirmed. "And how did that make you feel?" I paused, choosing my words carefully. Like I was never their daughter, just their financial resource, something to be extracted from, not invested in. My mother broke down crying at the defense table. My father tried to comfort her, but his gesture looked mechanical, performed for the jury, rather than genuine emotion. They'd played these roles so long, devoted parents, martyrs to ungrateful children, that truth had become foreign to them. The defense's case was built on portraying me as vindictive, claiming I'd orchestrated everything to punish them for choosing Madison. Their attorney presented a narrative where I'd abandoned the family, refused reasonable requests for help, and then built a company specifically to destroy them. It might have worked if Aunt Patricia hadn't been their next witness. "I've watched my brother manipulate family finances for 20 years, she testified. Long before Joel Pay's success, they were borrowing money they never repaid, making promises based on future windfalls that never materialized. The only thing that changed when Joel Pay became successful was the scale of their fraud." She presented her own documentation, loans from before I'd even graduated high school, family members they'd scammed using similar tactics. The pattern was clear. My parents were serial financial predators who'd simply found their biggest mark in their own daughter. The prosecution also called employees from banks where fraudulent loans had been secured. One loan officer testified about my parents' application for a family business expansion loan. They claimed their daughter was a silent partner in their restaurant venture, he explained. Provided documentation showing her as a co-owner, financial statements suggesting she'd invested significantly. "We only discovered the forgery when she became newsworthy and we recognized the name." "Did you verify with Ms. Williams before approving the loan?" "They said she was traveling internationally for her tech company and had given them power of attorney. The documents looked legitimate." "What happened to the restaurant?" "It never opened. The money disappeared into personal expenses, mortgage payments, credit card bills, shopping. Day by day, witness by witness, the case built into an avalanche of evidence. My success hadn't made my parents criminals. It had simply given them a bigger stage for their existing crimes. The turning point came when the prosecution presented evidence I hadn't known existed. The FBI's digital forensics team had recovered deleted messages between my parents from the week before they stole my college fund. "Robert, are you sure about this?" my mother had texted. "It's her whole future." "She'll be fine," he'd responded. "Kids like her always land on their feet. Madison needs this. She's fragile. Joel pays tough. Besides, your mother was senile when she wrote that will. The money should go where it's needed most. But what if she doesn't forgive us? Then we'll know we raised an ungrateful child. Either way, Madison gets Yale. The messages destroyed their claim that this had been a desperate last-minute decision. They'd planned it, debated it, and ultimately decided my future was an acceptable sacrifice for Madison's comfort. During closing arguments, the prosecutor painted a devastating picture. This isn't just fraud. It's not just identity theft. It's a fundamental betrayal of the most sacred trust, that between parent and child. The defendants didn't just steal money. They stole their daughter's faith in family, her belief that parents protect rather than prey. And when she succeeded, despite their sabotage, they didn't celebrate. They escalated, viewing her success as an ATM to fund their lifestyle and their other daughter's lies. The defense tried one last emotional appeal, my parents' attorney, arguing they were misguided but loving parents who'd made mistakes trying to provide for both children. The jury didn't buy it. Deliberation took less than 4 hours. Guilty on all counts: wire fraud, identity theft, conspiracy to commit fraud, forgery. The courtroom erupted when the verdict was read, but I felt only hollow relief. Justice had been served, but it tasted like ashes. These were still my parents, and some part of me, the little girl who'd once believed they loved me, mourned what could have been. Madison found me in the courthouse bathroom afterward, both of us hiding from the media circus outside. "I'm sorry," she said to my reflection in the mirror. "Not just for what I did, but for what I didn't do. I could have stopped this years ago if I'd had the courage to say no." "We were both kids," I said, surprising myself with the words. "They raised us to play these roles. You as the golden child, me as the scapegoat. The difference is, I broke free first." "Do you think—" she started, then stopped. "What? Do you think there's any chance we could ever be real sisters? Not the roles they assigned us, but actual family?" I turned to face her directly. "I don't know. Trust takes time to rebuild, and we've got a lot of broken pieces between us. But maybe we start with truth and see where it leads." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Truth. I can do truth." We left the bathroom together, facing the cameras side by side. The headlines would scream about family betrayal and justice served. But in that moment, walking out of that courthouse, I felt something I hadn't expected, the tiniest seed of hope, that from the wreckage of our family, something real might grow. The sentencing would come later, my parents facing up to 20 years in federal prison. The irony wasn't lost on me that they'd spend more time paying for their crimes than they'd spent raising me, but that was their choice, their consequence, their ending. My story was just beginning. FairShare had just closed our Series C funding at a $100 million valuation. We were expanding internationally, helping millions of young adults protect themselves from financial abuse. Universities were integrating our resources into freshman orientation. Financial institutions were partnering with us to flag suspicious family-related transactions. From the ashes of my stolen college fund, we'd built something that ensured no one else would suffer alone in silence. My parents had been right about one unintended thing. Adversity had made me strong, just not in the way they'd planned. The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, delivered by a courier who required signature confirmation. The return address made my hands tremble. Bowman and Associates Estate Attorneys. Richard Bowman had been my grandmother's lawyer, the one who'd revealed her video message during the trial. I couldn't imagine what more there could be to discover. Inside my office at FairShare's new headquarters, we'd outgrown the shared space and now occupied an entire floor in downtown San Francisco. I opened the envelope with careful fingers. "Dear Ms. Williams," the letter began. "During the recent legal proceedings regarding your parents' criminal activities, certain irregularities in your grandmother Rose Williams' estate came to light. As part of the FBI's investigation, we were required to conduct a full forensic audit of all financial transactions related to the estate. This audit has revealed information that requires your immediate attention." My mouth went dry as I continued reading. The audit had discovered a second trust fund, one my grandmother had established through a different attorney 2 years before her death. She'd hidden it completely, telling no one listing it under her maiden name, with instructions for it to remain sealed until my 25th birthday. The letter continued. "Your grandmother appears to have anticipated potential malfeasance by your parents. She established this secondary trust with explicit instructions that its existence never be revealed to them. The trust contains $500 to $1,000 in assets accumulated through careful investment of her personal savings. Additionally, there is a sealed letter addressed to you." I had to read it 3 times before the words sank in. $500,000. My grandmother had somehow had planned for the possibility that my parents would betray me and had created a secret safety net. "When can I see the letter?" I asked Richard Bowman when I called him minutes later. "I can meet you this afternoon. Joelpe, there's something else you should know. Your grandmother came to me in secret because she discovered your parents had been accessing her primary accounts. She was concerned about their financial habits even then." That afternoon in a law office overlooking the bay, I held my grandmother's final letter with shaking hands. Her handwriting, still elegant despite her age, filled 3 pages. "My dearest Joelpe," it began. "If you're reading this, then my worst fears have come true. I've watched your parents favor Madison since her birth, watched them dim your light to brighten hers, and I know with certainty that they will sacrifice your future for her comfort if given the chance." Tears blurred my vision as I continued reading. "The money I left for your education in my main will is likely gone used for Madison's wants rather than your needs. This is why I created this second trust, hidden where they cannot touch it. But more than money, I want to leave you with truth. Your parents have a sickness, my dear. They cannot see your worth because it threatens the narrative they've built around Madison's specialness. Every achievement of yours reminds them that their favoritism has no basis in merit, only in their own broken psychology. I've enclosed documentation of their history, loans they've taken in my name, money they've stolen from my accounts, lies they've told family members. Use this if you need to protect yourself. But more importantly, know this: you are extraordinary, not because of them or despite them, but because of who you are at your core. Build your life away from their poison. Find people who see your worth. Create the family you deserve, not the one you were born into. And when they inevitably come begging, because success like yours cannot be hidden, remember that forgiveness does not require reconciliation. You can release the anger without inviting them back into your life. All my love and faith in your brilliant future, Grandma Rose. P.S. There's a reason I taught you chess while they were teaching Madison to pose for pictures. Strategy beats performance every time. The pages trembled in my hands. Even from beyond the grave, my grandmother had been protecting me, planning for contingencies, playing a long game my parents never saw coming. The additional documentation she'd mentioned was damning. Proof that their financial crimes had started long before they'd touched my college fund. "There's more," Richard said gently. "Your grandmother updated this trust annually. The investment strategy she outlined has grown the initial amount considerably. With compound interest and market gains over the past 7 years, the trust is now worth approximately $873,000. I laughed through my tears, a sound somewhere between joy and grief. My grandmother had given me more than money. She'd given me validation proof that someone in my family had seen the truth and loved me enough to protect me from it. That evening, as news of my parents' sentencing hit the media, 15 years each with possibility of parole in 10, my phone rang with an unknown number. Joelpe. Madison's voice was small, exhausted. "Did you see?" "I saw. 15 years. They'll be in their 70s when they get out." We sat in silence with that reality. Our parents, who'd spent our childhoods building elaborate facades, would spend our adulthoods in federal prison. "I got into community college," she said suddenly, "starting fresh. Accounting major. Figured I should learn what honest numbers look like." "That's good, Madison, really." "I also got a job. Nothing fancy. Data entry at a small firm. But they don't know who I am, and I'm keeping it that way. No more Instagram, no more pretending. Just work." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you're the only family I have left who might actually give a damn if I become a better person. Everyone else wrote me off with Mom and Dad, and I don't blame them. I thought about Grandma Rose's words about creating the family you deserve. Madison had been shaped by our parents' poison just as much as I had, just in different ways. Maybe there was hope for her yet. "Send me your class schedule," I said finally. "If you're serious about this, you'll need tutoring. I know some people." "You'd help me." The shock in her voice was painful to hear. "I'm not helping the girl who laughed while they stole from me. I'm potentially helping whoever you're trying to become. There's a difference." "I understand, Joe. I love you. I know I have no right to say that, but I do." I couldn't say it back, not yet. Maybe not ever. But I said, "Keep going to therapy. Keep doing the work. We'll see what grows from there." The call ended with tentative hope, a fragile bridge built over an ocean of hurt. I didn't know if it would hold, but attempting to build it felt like growth. Later that week, Forbes officially published my 30 Under 30 profile. The photo shoot had taken place in the TechFlow offices, where it all began, with Marcus beaming like a proud brother in the background. The article detailed my journey from receptionist to CEO, highlighting how FairShare had grown to help over 3 million users protect themselves from family financial abuse. But the universe had one more twist in store. During the shoot, the photographer had asked to include a family photo. I declined explaining the situation, but she'd said something that stuck with me. "Family isn't always blood. Show the people who lifted you up." So the final photo in the spread showed me surrounded by my chosen family, Marcus, who'd seen potential when I could barely see tomorrow; Sharon, who'd fought for justice when I was too exhausted to fight anymore; Patricia, the aunt who'd broken ranks to tell the truth; my core team at FairShare, brilliant people who'd believed in the mission; even Rachel from TechFlow, who'd become like an older sister. These were the people who'd caught me when my blood family let me fall. They'd proven that love wasn't about DNA or obligation, but about showing up, telling truth, and building something together. The Forbes issue hit newsstands the same day I received paperwork about the secret trust. The timing felt cosmic. As my parents entered federal prison, I was receiving both public recognition and private vindication. The daughter they'd deemed worthless was worth nearly $1 million and running a company valued at over $100 million. The sacrificial lamb had become a success story. But the real reckoning came in a letter my parents sent from prison through their attorney. Even facing 15 years behind bars, they couldn't admit fault. "Dear Joel Pay," it read in my mother's handwriting, "We hope someday you'll understand that everything we did was out of love. Parents make hard choices. We chose to invest in Madison's potential because she needed more support. You were always so independent, so capable. We knew you'd survive. In a way, we gave you the gift of self-reliance. Your success proves we were right about your strength. When we're released, we hope you'll see that we're all family and family forgives." I read it twice, then fed it into the shredder. They still didn't get it. They'd reframed theft as a gift abuse, as tough love abandonment, as confidence in my abilities. Even prison hadn't taught them accountability. But their delusions no longer mattered. The reckoning was complete. They'd face 15 years of consequences while I faced a future unlimited by their poison. Madison was trying to build something authentic from her ruins. The extended family had learned hard truths about enabling. And I had Grandma Rose's final gift, not just money, but proof that I'd been worth protecting all along. That night, I stood in my apartment looking out at the city lights holding my grandmother's letter. Somewhere across the bay, my parents were learning to navigate their first week in federal prison. Madison was probably studying accounting principles in a tiny shared apartment. The family that had once seemed so permanent, so suffocating, had scattered to the winds. But I wasn't alone. My phone buzzed with messages from my chosen family. Marcus celebrating a new client win, Sharon sharing legal humor, my team planning our next product launch. These connections built on respect and genuine care were worth more than any inheritance. Strategy beats performance every time. I whispered to the night sky, toasting my grandmother's memory with a glass of wine. She'd been right about everything. The money was wonderful, but the validation was priceless. Someone had seen my worth when no one else would. Someone had believed in my future when my present was being stolen. Someone had loved me enough to plan for my protection. The reckoning was over. The future was mine to build. And for the first time in 7 years, I felt truly, completely free. 2 years passed in a blur of growth, both personal and professional. FairShare had expanded to 12 countries, our valuation soared past $500 million, and I'd been invited to speak at conferences about turning trauma into triumph. But success couldn't shield me from the letter that arrived on a gray September morning, forwarded through my lawyer with a note. This came from the Federal Correctional Facility. They're asking for a response. The envelope bore the careful handwriting of someone with too much time, my mother's formerly elegant script, now cramped from prison regulations. Inside were actually 2 letters, one from each parent, both filtered through the prison's therapeutic program. My coffee grew cold as I read their attempts at accountability. Dear Jolpe, my father's letter began. As part of our rehabilitation, we've been working with Dr. Miranda Sullivan to understand the harm we caused. She's helped us see that what we called family financial management was actually theft, and what we called parenting choices was emotional abuse. I'm writing to acknowledge the specific ways I failed you. The letter continued for 3 pages detailing memories I'd tried to forget. Him watching me count my savings for college while knowing he'd already spent it. Calling my guidance counselor to withdraw applications, laughing with my mother about how I'd figure it out while Madison got everything. Each admission felt like a scab being pulled off an old wound. My mother's letter was shorter, but more manipulative even in its supposed contrition. My therapist says I need to acknowledge how my own childhood shaped my parenting. My mother, your grandmother Williams, not Rose, always favored my brother, gave him opportunities, while telling me to be grateful for scraps. I swore my daughters would have better, but I just repeated the pattern in reverse. Madison became my do-over child, the one who would have everything I didn't. You became, I'm ashamed to say, you became my mother in my mind. Someone who didn't need help, who would survive without support. Dr. Sullivan calls this intergenerational trauma. I call it my greatest failure. Both letters ended with requests to begin healing dialogue through the prison's family reconciliation program. They wanted video calls supervised at first with the goal of rebuilding what we destroyed. I set the letters aside and called Sharon. They're trying to manipulate me through therapy speak. Maybe, Sharon said carefully, but the prison therapist, Dr. Sullivan, is legitimate. I looked her up. She specializes in financial crimes and family dynamics. Your parents might be genuinely working on themselves, or they might be working an angle, or both. That evening, Madison called. She'd received similar letters and was equally conflicted. I've been seeing them once a month, she admitted. Started 6 months ago. They're different. Still themselves, but like someone turned the volume down on their worst traits. Why didn't you tell me? Because you've built something beautiful without them, and I didn't want to drag you backward. But Joe, I think you should know what they're saying in therapy. She told me about their sessions, how our parents had been forced to confront the reality that their golden child had inherited their worst traits. The lying, the entitlement, the willingness to sacrifice others for comfort. How they'd finally admitted that making me the scapegoat had been easier than dealing with their own failures. Dad actually cried, Madison said. like real tears, not performance ones. When he talked about stealing your college fund, he said it was the moment he became his father, a man who took from his children instead of providing for them. And you believe this transformation is real. Madison was quiet for a moment. I believe they're in pain, real pain. Whether that translates to real change, I don't know. But I know what fake remorse looks like. I perfected it for years. This feels different. I hung up more unsettled than before. For 2 years, I'd built my life on the foundation that my parents were irredeemable villains. If they were capable of change, what did that mean for the walls I'd built? The answer came from an unexpected source. Dr. Miranda Sullivan reached out directly with my parents' permission to offer context. "Ms. Williams," she said during our phone call, "I want to be clear that I'm not advocating for reconciliation. That's entirely your choice. But I thought you should know that your parents' work in therapy has been significant. They've moved past the typical mistakes were made phase into genuine accountability." What does that mean exactly? They've acknowledged that they stole from you not just money but opportunity and trust. They've admitted that favoring Madison was about their own egos, not her needs. Most importantly, they've stopped the narrative that your success validates their abuse. They now understand that you succeeded despite them, not because of them. And they expect me to forgive them for this sudden enlightenment. Actually, no. That's what's unusual. Most prisoners in their situation push for quick forgiveness to ease their guilt. Your parents have explicitly said they don't deserve forgiveness, that they need to earn even the chance to apologize properly. They're prepared for you to say no to any contact. This unexpected maturity threw me. The parents I knew would never have accepted rejection without a fight. But then again, the parents I knew hadn't spent 2 years in federal prison being forced to confront their crimes daily. I decided to test the waters. Through Sharon, I agreed to one letter exchange. Not a video call, just written words where I could control the pace and my reactions. My letter was brief. "I received your letters. I'm willing to hear what you have to say, but I make no promises about forgiveness or future contact. If you're genuinely working on yourselves, prove it through consistent actions, not words. Also, I know about the book." The last line was a test. Through publishing contacts, I'd learned they'd been approached about writing a memoir from prison. Our Fall from Grace, a Family's Story. The advance would have been substantial enough to set them up after release. Their response arrived 2 weeks later, faster than typical prison mail. My father's handwriting was shaky. "You know about the book? Of course you do. You always were 3 steps ahead, just like your grandmother Rose. We turned down the deal. It felt like another betrayal, profiting from pain we caused. Dr. Sullivan helped us see that our story isn't ours to tell. It's yours. If anyone writes about this family, it should be you. We've instructed our lawyer to decline all media offers. Our story ends with accountability, not another payday." My mother had added a postscript. "I dream about that dinner where we told you about the money. In my dreams, I stop ourselves. I say Madison can take loans like everyone else. I choose both my daughters instead of destroying one for the other. I wake up knowing I can't change it, but I can at least stop causing new harm. No books, no interviews, no more lies." I fact-checked through Sharon. They'd indeed turned down multiple offers, including a documentary that would have paid 6 figures. For my parents, who'd always chased the next scheme, walking away from easy money was unprecedented. "They might actually be serious," Sharon mused, "or playing a very long game." But then something happened that convinced me their change might be real. A reporter investigating financial family crimes reached out for an interview. She mentioned my parents had agreed to speak with her from prison, and I braced for another round of public manipulation. Instead, the article portrayed them as cautionary tales. They'd told the reporter on record that they were criminals who destroyed their family for greed and favoritism. They detailed their crimes without excuse, admitted I'd built Fair Share despite their sabotage, and urged other parents to see them as examples of what not to do. "We stole our daughter's inheritance, her trust, and her faith in family," my mother was quoted saying. We're in prison, but she's the one who got a life sentence of trauma. There's no forgiveness for that, only accountability." Madison called after the article went viral. "Did you see what they said? They didn't try to spin it at all. Just truth." I had seen it. For the first time in my life, my parents had put my truth above their image. They'd made themselves the villains in public to validate my story. It wasn't redemption, but it was a start. 3 months later, I agreed to a video call. My hands shook as the screen connected, showing my parents in matching prison attire, seated at a metal table. They looked older, grayer, smaller somehow. But their eyes were clear, in a way I'd never seen. No calculation, no performance, just tentative hope. "Jolpe," my mother said softly, "thank you for this chance." "I'm not promising anything," I reminded them. "This is just a conversation." "We know," my father said. "We're grateful for even this." The call lasted 30 minutes. They asked about FairShare's impact, seemed genuinely proud when I mentioned the millions we'd helped. They shared their prison routines, my mother teaching literacy classes, my father working in the library. They didn't ask for money, didn't hint at needs, didn't try to guilt me about their circumstances. When the time was up, my mother said something that stayed with me. "We love you. We've always loved you. We just loved ourselves more. And that's the kind of love that destroys. We're learning the difference now." I ended the call feeling drained but oddly lighter. They weren't the parents I'd wished for as a child, but they were trying to become people who could acknowledge the parents they'd been. It wasn't enough, might never be enough, but it was more than I'd thought possible. Over the following months, we continued sporadic contact. Letters, mostly occasional calls. They never pushed for more than I offered. Madison reported their sessions were increasingly focused on understanding the damage of generational trauma and their role in perpetuating it. "They're writing letters to Grandma Rose," she told me. "Obviously, she can't read them, but Dr. Sullivan has them write to people they've wronged. Dad wrote 10 pages apologizing for calling her senile for stealing what she meant for you. Mom wrote about finally understanding why Grandma protected you. She saw who they really were." The olive branch they'd extended was thorny, complicated by years of betrayal, but it was real, cultivated in the harsh soil of consequence and therapy. I didn't trust it, yet might never fully trust it, but I acknowledged its existence. FairShare continued to thrive. I spoke at universities about recognizing financial abuse, testified before Congress about protecting young adults from family fraud. My success had become bigger than personal vindication. It was about systematic change. But late at night, I sometimes reread their letters, these strange documents of accountability from people I'd written off as incapable of change. They were rewriting themselves in prison page by painful page, trying to become people worthy of the daughters they'd failed. I didn't owe them forgiveness. Dr. Sullivan had been clear about that, as had my own therapist. But I owed myself the chance to see if healing was possible, even if reconciliation wasn't. They'd stolen my past, but I wouldn't let that theft define my future. The olive branch remained extended, neither accepted nor rejected, just acknowledged. And for now, that was enough. The invitation to ring the opening bell at the New York Stock Exchange arrived on a Thursday morning that seemed otherwise ordinary. FairShare was going public, our IPO set to be one of the most anticipated tech debuts of the year. The company born from my stolen college fund was now valued at $2 billion. "We need to discuss security," Sharon said during our planning call. "This is going to be heavily covered. Your story is part of the company narrative now." She was right. The financial media couldn't resist the poetry of it. Girl robbed of education funds builds educational platform about financial theft, becomes billionaire before 30. Forbes wanted an exclusive. The Wall Street Journal was preparing a feature. Everyone wanted to tell the story of the ultimate revenge success. But I had other plans. "I want to announce the FairShare Foundation at the IPO," I told my board. 50 million of my personal shares dedicated to providing emergency education funds for young adults whose families have financially betrayed them. Patricia Kumar, still my favorite board member, smiled knowingly. Turning full circle, I love it. But that's a significant portion of your stake. Money isn't the revenge, I explained. Impact is. Every student who gets to college despite family betrayal proves that theft doesn't have to define your future. The week before the IPO, I was in my office finalizing the foundation details when my assistant knocked. Jolpay. There's a woman here claiming to be your Aunt Patricia, but she's not on the approved visitor list. I found Patricia in the lobby looking uncharacteristically nervous. She'd been my rock during the family explosion, but we'd grown distant as I'd risen and she'd struggled with her own family's financial pressures. "I'm sorry to ambush you," she began. "I know you're busy with the IPO." "It's fine, come up." In my office, she fidgeted with her purse handle. "I need to tell you something about the trial, about my testimony." My stomach dropped. "What about it?" "Your parents tried to bribe me before I testified. They offered me $50,000 to say you'd agreed to give Madison the money they'd stolen from other family members." "But you didn't take it." "No, but..." She took a shaky breath. "I thought about it. For 3 days, I actually considered it. Jim had lost his job, we were behind on mortgage payments, and $50,000 would have solved everything. I came so close to betraying you for money just like they did." I studied her face, seeing new lines of stress and old shadows of guilt. "But you didn't." "Only because I remembered Rose, your grandmother. She helped me once when I was young and stupid and in debt. She could have held it over me, but she just said, 'Family means lifting each other up, not standing on each other's shoulders.' I couldn't dishonor her memory by crushing you." We sat in silence for a moment before she continued. "I'm not telling you this for forgiveness. I'm telling you because the financial stress that almost made me betray you, it's still there. And I'm watching my kids start to resent each other over resources just like my parents did with Madison and me." I finished. "I don't want to repeat the pattern, so I'm here humbling myself, asking not for money, but for advice. How do I keep financial stress from poisoning my family?" This was why she'd really come. Not for a handout, but for wisdom. I pulled up the Fair Share Foundation plans on my screen. "What if you help me run this?" Her eyes widened. "What?" "The foundation needs someone who understands how financial pressure can corrupt family bonds. Someone who's felt that temptation but chose integrity. The salary is competitive, and more importantly, you'd be helping other families avoid our fate." Tears rolled down her cheeks. "You'd trust me with that, after I just told you You almost fell but didn't. That's not weakness, Patricia. That's strength tested and proven. I need someone who understands the gray areas, not someone who's never been tempted." She accepted, and suddenly the foundation had its heart. Patricia brought a perspective I'd missed. Not everyone who considers betrayal follows through, and those who resist need support too. The IPO announcement triggered exactly the media storm Sharon had predicted. But the real circus began when a familiar face appeared on morning television. Madison, polished but not performative, sitting across from a national anchor. "Your sister's company goes public tomorrow," the anchor said. "Your family's story has become part of business school case studies. How does that feel?" I held my breath, waiting for the knife, but Madison had truly changed. "Proud," she said simply. "Proud and humbled. My sister built an empire from the ashes of our family's betrayal. I'm in community college studying accounting because she showed me that real success comes from real work, not stolen funds." "There were reports you're estranged." "We're rebuilding," Madison corrected, slowly, carefully. "I spent years being the golden child who got everything while she got nothing. Now I'm learning to be just Madison. Flawed, working on myself, grateful for whatever relationship she's willing to build. The IPO, that's her triumph. I'm just trying to deserve being called her sister again." The interview went viral, but not for scandal. People were moved by Madison's humility, her refusal to claim any credit or connection she hadn't earned. She'd turned down multiple offers to tell her side for money. Instead, she gave one honest interview and went back to her quiet life. The morning of the IPO, I stood in the NYSE building surrounded by my chosen family. Marcus flew in from San Francisco still beaming with pride. Sharon wore her lucky courtroom shoes, because this is another kind of victory. My executive team investors and employees who'd believed in the mission from day one. "You ready for this?" Marcus asked as we prepared for the bell. "I've been ready since I was 18 with 2 suitcases and no money," I replied. But just before we went onto the floor, my phone buzzed with a message that stopped me cold. It was from the federal prison's email system sent by my mother through their monitored channels. "Watching on the community TV, your father and I are so proud. Not of the money. We forfeited any claim to pride about that. But of the person you've become despite us. Ring that bell knowing you earned every chime. Love, Mom and Dad. P.S. We're leading a financial literacy class for incoming inmates today, using FairShare's resources, trying to help others avoid our mistakes." I showed Sharon, who squeezed my shoulder. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said, meaning it. "They're becoming the parents they should have been, even if it's too late for us." The bell ceremony was everything I dreamed and more. As I stood on that platform, hand on the button that would start trading of Fair stock, I thought about the journey. From a teenager with a stolen future to a CEO taking her company public. From family betrayal to building tools that protected millions from similar theft. The bell rang out across the trading floor and Fair opened at $42 per share, making me a paper billionaire. The number felt surreal, but what felt real was the flood of messages from FairShare users celebrating with me. Young adults who'd protected their assets, documented abuse, found resources for independence. They were the true victory. That afternoon, as Fair closed up 30% on its first day, a reporter asked the question everyone wanted answered. "This is often called the ultimate revenge story. Is that how you see it?" I thought carefully before answering. Revenge implies I built this to hurt them. I built this to help others. If my parents feel hurt watching my success, that's their consequence to process. I'm too busy building the future to live in the past they created. But the universe wasn't done with its poetry. That evening, Patricia called from the Foundation's new offices. "You need to see this," she said. "The first applications are coming in for emergency education funds. Look at this one." I read through the application from a 19-year-old whose parents had drained her college savings for a sibling's legal fees. The documentation was thorough. She'd clearly learned from FairShare's resources. At the bottom, she'd written, "I know Joel Pay Williams' story because my mom went to high school with her. She used to say if Joel Pay could build $1 billion company from nothing, I could survive this too. I'm not trying to match her success. I just want the chance she fought for, to try." We approved her funding that night, and hundreds more in the weeks that followed. Each success story multiplied the impact, creating ripples of opportunity where there had been theft and betrayal. Madison sent a simple text after seeing the IPO coverage. "Grandma Rose would be so proud. You didn't just find a way, you built a highway for everyone else. I love you, sis." This time I texted back, "Love you too." Because success, real success, wasn't about the money or the vindication. It was about transforming poison into medicine, theft into abundance, betrayal into a blueprint for others to protect themselves. My parents had been right that I'd find a way. They'd just never imagined that way would lead to the New York Stock Exchange and beyond. The numbers on my portfolio screen seemed imaginary, but the impact was real. Every download, every protected asset, every funded education was proof that sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's multiplication, taking what was meant to limit you and turning it into limitless opportunity for others. And that multiplication was just beginning. 7 years after that nightmare August evening when my world shattered, I stood in my Manhattan penthouse on Christmas Eve, staring at my phone. The voicemail notification blinked insistently, a message from my mother that would set the final act in motion. Outside, snow began to fall over Central Park, each flake catching the light like a frozen tear. Jolpe, sweetheart. My mother's voice trembled through the speaker, raw with desperation I'd never heard before. I know we have no right to ask anything of you, but your father, he's dying. His kidneys are failing. The prison medical care is limited, and the waiting list for donors is years long. Madison can't donate. Her years of substance abuse at Yale damaged her organs. You're our only hope. Please just get tested. Just see if you're a match. We're not asking for forgiveness or money or anything else. Just, please save your father. Please come home. I played it 3 times, each repetition revealing new layers. The woman who'd once coldly told me to find a way was now begging me to be her way. The father who'd said I'd thank them one day for teaching me resilience now needed that resilience to survive. My phone rang immediately. Marcus. I saw the news about the medical situation, he said without preamble. It hit the financial press because of the IPO. What do you need? I don't know, I admitted. I honestly don't know. The irony cut deep. My father needed an organ donation, and I was likely the only match. The man who'd stolen my future now needed me to give him one. The universe had a twisted sense of dramatic timing. Whatever you decide, Marcus said gently, make sure it's your choice. Not guilt, not obligation. Your choice. But I already knew something my mother didn't. 3 months ago, during a comprehensive executive physical, my doctor had mentioned my blood type made me a universal donor. Out of curiosity, I'd undergone preliminary testing to join the organ donor registry. The results had flagged something interesting, genetic markers suggesting I'd be an excellent match for family members. Dr. Sarah Chen, my physician and now friend, had called me personally. Your father's medical records were flagged in the system because of your family name. He's in renal failure. Were you aware? I'd filed the information away, unsure what to do with it. Now, with my mother's desperate plea echoing in my ears, the decision I'd been avoiding stood before me in all its complexity. Sharon arrived within an hour, lawyer mode, fully engaged. You need to think about this carefully. Not just the medical risks, but the emotional ramifications. And if you do this, we need ironclad agreements about contact publicity and future expectations. I know, I said, pouring wine with steady hands. But here's what's eating at me. If I let him die when I could save him, am I any better than they were? They chose Madison's comfort over my future. Would I be choosing my comfort over his life? That's not the same thing, Sharon said firmly. They stole from you. You'd be under no obligation even if he was a stranger, and he's certainly been worse than that. Patricia arrived next, having driven down from the foundation offices. I heard, she said, simply hugging me. What does your gut say? My gut says this is a test, I admitted. Not from them, but from the universe. They sacrificed my well-being for their preferences. Do I sacrifice their well-being for mine? We talked through the night, examining every angle. Madison called crying too hard to be coherent, begging me to at least get tested. Their prison therapist, Dr. Sullivan, sent a message through official channels saying my parents understood if I said no, that they'd forbidden her from advocating on their behalf. By morning, I'd made my decision. I'll get tested, I told Sharon, but with conditions. The conditions were extensive. If I was a match and agreed to donate, there would be no publicity, no family reunion narrative, no claims of redemption through my sacrifice. The medical procedures would be handled without direct contact. Most importantly, this didn't constitute forgiveness or reconciliation. It was a medical procedure, not an emotional reset. And one more thing, I added, they have to complete something first. 2 days later, my parents sat in a prison conference room with cameras rolling. Not for publicity, but for the Fair Share Foundation's educational resources. They recorded a comprehensive confession and warning detailing every step of how they'd justified stealing from me, how they'd convinced themselves it was acceptable, how they'd destroyed our family for favoritism and greed. If you're watching this, my father said to the camera, his face gaunt from illness but his words clear, and you're thinking about taking from one child to give to another, stop. Look at us. Federal prison. Dying alone. Our successful daughter considering whether we deserve to live. Is that the future you want? My mother added, we called it family financial management. We said Jolpe was strong enough to handle it. We told ourselves Madison needed it more. Every excuse was a lie to avoid admitting we were thieves, stealing from our own child. Don't be us. Don't end up here. The video would be used in financial literacy programs, family counseling sessions, and fraud prevention workshops. They'd agreed to bare their souls publicly to prevent other families from following their path. The test results came back exactly as I'd suspected. Perfect match. My kidney would give my father decades of life if the transplant succeeded. Dr. Chen walked me through the risks. Minimal for someone my age and health, but not zero. The real risk, she said carefully, is psychological. Organ donation between family members with this level of trauma. It's complicated. Have you spoken with a therapist? I had. Dr. Williams, no relation, thankfully had spent weeks helping me process the decision. You're not obligated to light yourself on fire to keep someone else warm, she'd reminded me. But if you can share warmth without burning, that's different. Christmas morning arrived with the decision made. I would donate, but on my terms. The surgery was scheduled for New Year's Day. New year, new kidney, new chance at life for my father. The poetry wasn't lost on me. Madison met me at the hospital sober for 2 years now and looking healthier than I'd ever seen her. I can't believe you're doing this, she said, tears streaming. After everything. I'm not doing it for them, I clarified. I'm doing it for me, so I can look in the mirror knowing I chose to be better than what they taught us. The preoperative procedures began. Forms, signed tests, run preparations made. My parents were brought from the prison medical ward, and I saw them briefly through glass. They looked ancient, broken, grateful in a way that transcended words. My father pressed his hand to the window, and after a moment, I matched the gesture. Not forgiveness, but acknowledgement. We were all human, all flawed, all trying to survive our choices. Dr. Sullivan facilitated one conversation before surgery. My parents on one side of reinforced glass, me on the other, phones in hand. Why, my father asked, voice barely a whisper. Why save me after what we did? Because Grandma Rose taught me chess, I said simply. And in chess, you don't win by mimicking your opponent's moves. You win by being better. My mother sobbed. We destroyed everything good in our lives. You were the best thing we ever did, and we threw you away for a fantasy. Yes, I agreed. You did, and that can't be undone. But maybe dying doesn't have to be part of your consequence. Maybe living with the truth is harder. The surgery went perfectly. I woke to find my chosen family surrounding me. Marcus, Sharon, Patricia, my team from FairShare. The people who'd proven that love was action, not blood. Madison sat in the corner holding a bouquet of roses that looked familiar. From Grandma's garden, she explained. I've been tending it at the old house. The new owners let me. I thought she'd want to be here. My father's recovery was swift. The new kidney functioned perfectly, his body accepting what his daughter offered despite having rejected her in every other way. I recovered in a different wing, carefully separated but monitored. The media never caught wind of it, our legal agreements holding firm. 3 weeks post-surgery, I returned to my penthouse 1 kidney lighter, but somehow feeling more complete. The decision hadn't been about them. It had been about me, about choosing who I wanted to be regardless of who they'd been. FairShare's stock had risen another 20% during my absence, the company running smoothly under my capable team. The foundation had funded over 1,000 students, each one, a life changed, a future reclaimed. Madison had started a support group for siblings of family financial abuse, recognizing that golden children were victims too, just differently damaged. But the real conclusion came in a letter my father sent 6 months later, his handwriting strong again thanks to the kidney I'd given him. You asked why save me. I've spent months thinking about it. You saved me not because I deserved it, but because you deserved to be the kind of person who could. You broke the cycle, Jolpe. You looked at cruelty and chose kindness, looked at theft and chose generosity, looked at abandonment and chose connection. Not with us, we burnt that bridge, but with the world. You chose to heal instead of wound, build instead of destroy, give instead of take. I'm alive because of your kidney, but you're alive, truly alive, because you refuse to let our poison define you. That's your real revenge, not the money or the success, though those are impressive. Your revenge is that you became everything we failed to be: generous, honest, fair, and kind. I'll spend whatever years your gift has given me trying to earn a fraction of your character. Not for forgiveness, I know that ship has sailed, but because you showed me it's never too late to choose differently. All my love and infinite respect, Dad. P.S. Your mother wants you to know we watch every Fair Share announcement with pride we don't deserve to feel. You built beauty from our ashes. That's not redemption for us, but it's hope for everyone else. I filed the letter with all the others, a record of their transformation that I might someday fully believe. For now, I had work to do. Students to fund, families to help a company to run a life to live fully with both kidneys or one. The Christmas message that had started this final chapter was about saving a life. But in the end, the life most fully saved was my own. Saved from bitterness, from becoming them, from letting their theft define my capacity to give. Grandma Rose had been right about chess. The best players don't just win. They transform the board itself. The conference room at Fair Share headquarters felt smaller with so many voices on the video call. I'd assembled what I'd come to think of as my council of wisdom, Marcus joining from Singapore, where he was launching his third startup, Sharon, from her law office, Patricia from the foundation, Dr. Williams, my therapist, and surprisingly, Dr. Miranda Sullivan, the prison therapist who'd been working with my parents. Thank you all for making time. I began fidgeting with my pen. I need to make a decision and I need perspectives from people I trust. They all knew about the kidney match. What they didn't know was the call I'd received that morning from the transplant coordinator. The situation has become more complex. I explained, pulling up the medical reports. During pre-surgical testing, they've discovered I have May-Thurner syndrome. It's a compression of the iliac vein. Normally it's manageable, but combined with kidney donation, it increases your surgical risk. Sharon finished her legal mind already calculating liability. Significantly, I confirmed. Not life-threatening necessarily, but there's a 15% chance of complications that could affect my quality of life long-term. Blood clots, chronic pain, potential for future surgeries. The room fell silent, the weight of this new information settling over everyone. Marcus spoke first. Joe, this changes everything. No one would blame you for backing out. Wouldn't they? I asked. I'm a match. He'll die without this kidney. If I back out now because of a 15% risk, you'd be making a rational medical decision, Dr. Williams interjected firmly. This isn't about courage or cowardice. It's about informed consent and reasonable risk assessment. But it was Dr. Sullivan who surprised me. I need to share something with your permission. Your father's response when he learned about your condition. I nodded for her to continue. When the medical team informed him of the increased risk to you, his immediate response was to refuse the donation. He said, and I quote, "I've taken enough from her. I won't take her health too." He's prepared to go back on the waiting list. The words hit me like a physical blow. My father, the man who'd stolen my future without hesitation, was refusing to risk my health for his life. Prison and therapy had changed him more fundamentally than I'd believed possible. He doesn't know I'm sharing this, Dr. Sullivan continued. He and your mother have been adamant that you shouldn't feel any pressure. They've even discussed refusing the kidney if you proceed, though the medical team won't allow that if you consent. Patricia leaned forward. Joe, what does your gut say? Not your head, not your sense of obligation. Your gut. I closed my eyes, trying to separate the swirling emotions. My gut says this is bigger than medicine. This is about who I choose to be. Then let me ask you something, Dr. Williams said gently. If this was a stranger on the donation list, someone you'd never met, would you take this risk? The question clarified everything. No, I admitted. I wouldn't. I'd stay on the registry for someone else I could help without significant risk. Then why is this different? She pressed. Because I paused, forcing myself to examine the truth. Because part of me still needs to prove I'm better than them, that their cruelty didn't make me cruel, that I can choose love even when they chose greed. Oh, honey, Patricia said softly, you've already proven that, every day for 7 years. Fair Share proves it. The Foundation proves it. Your success proves it. You don't need to risk your health to validate your character. Marcus added, the strongest person in the room isn't the one who lifts the most weight. It's the one who knows when to put it down. Sharon had been typing furiously. I've just pulled up the statistics. With your father's current treatment, he has a 70% chance of surviving until another match is found. Those aren't great odds, but they're not negligible. This isn't a binary choice between your kidney or death. What would Grandma Rose say? Patricia asked suddenly. The question stopped me cold. I could almost hear her voice, see her knowing smile. She'd say that sacrifice without wisdom is just another form of theft, stealing from yourself. I need to talk to them, I decided. Face to face, no glass between us. If I'm going to make this decision, I need to look them in the eyes. The next day, in a secured medical conference room at the federal facility, I sat across from my parents for the first time in years, without barriers between us. They looked older, grayer, but their eyes held something I'd never seen before. Peace with consequences. You know about my condition, I said without preamble. We do, my father replied, and we're withdrawing consent for the donation. That's not your choice to make. Know it, my mother agreed, but we can make our position clear. We stole your past. We won't steal your future health, too. Even if it means Dad dies. They exchanged a look I recognized, the wordless communication of people who'd faced truth together. I've had 3 extra years to make amends because of the dialysis, my father said. 3 years to work with Dr. Sullivan to teach financial literacy to warn others. That's more than I deserved. I won't buy more years with your well-being. When did you develop this conscience? I asked, more curious than bitter. When I realized Madison's Yale disaster was our fault, he said quietly. We taught her that taking shortcuts was acceptable if you wanted something badly enough. She learned that from watching us. You succeeded because you learned the opposite, despite us, not because of us. My mother reached across the table, stopping just short of my hands. We've written letters to every family member we lied to about you. We've made what amends we could. But the greatest amend we can make is to stop taking from you. No more theft, not even of kidney tissue. And if another match doesn't come in time, my father's voice was steady. Then I die knowing my last act wasn't harming you. That's redemption enough. I studied them, these strangers who wore my parents' faces. The calculating criminals who'd stolen my inheritance had somehow become people willing to die rather than risk my health. It wasn't enough to erase the past, but it was something I'd never thought I'd see. Genuine love arriving too late, but arriving nonetheless. I'll think about it, I said, standing to leave. Really think about it. That's more than we deserve, my mother whispered. Whatever you decide, know that we see you now. Really see you. And what we see is magnificent. That night, I called Madison. She was in her new apartment, modest but clean, preparing for her CPA exam. They told me, she said immediately, about the risk, about them refusing. Joe, you know what this means. Tell me what you think it means. It means they finally understand love, real love, the kind that protects instead of takes. It took them 60 years and federal prison, but they learned. We talked for hours, sister to sister, about family and choices and the weight of being the one who survived. Madison had started therapy to deal with her role as the golden child who destroyed herself, trying to live up to impossible expectations. She was building herself from scratch just as I had, only with the advantage of watching my blueprint. "You know what's funny?" she said near midnight. "I spent years getting everything while you got nothing. But you got the one thing that mattered. You got to become yourself. I had to destroy who they made me before I could start." 3 days of contemplation led me back to Dr. Chen's office. "I'm not doing the surgery," I announced. "Not because I don't forgive them, but because forgiving them doesn't require destroying myself. They'll stay on the waiting list. I'll stay on the donor registry for someone I can help without significant risk. Everyone lives with their choices." Dr. Chen smiled. "That's a mature decision, and medically sound. Your father's already improving with a new treatment protocol. He might not need a kidney as urgently as initially thought." The universe, it seemed, rewarded wisdom with possibilities. I wrote my parents a letter that night, my first real communication without legal oversight. "Mom and Dad, I'm not giving you my kidney, not because I hate you, but because I love myself. You taught me that family takes from each other, but I've learned that real family protects each other, even from their own generous impulses. You refusing the kidney despite the cost showed me something I needed to see, that you're capable of placing my well-being above your needs. That's new, that's growth, that's worth more than any organ. Stay on the list, stay in treatment, keep teaching other inmates about financial crimes, keep warning families about favoritism. Live whatever years you have with purpose. That's what I need from you. Not your deaths on my conscience, but your lives serving as cautionary tales and eventual redemption stories. I'm building a life where 15% risk is too high for someone who caused me 100% harm, but I'm also building a life where I can wish you well from a distance. That's growth too. Gratefully alive with both kidneys, Jolpay. P.S. Tell Dr. Sullivan the chess lessons worked. Sometimes the best move is not to move at all." The response came through the prison email system 2 days later. "Our daughter, your decision is a gift greater than any kidney. You've shown us what boundaries look like, what self-love means, what wisdom does. We're crying as we write this, but they're tears of pride, not pain. Stay whole, stay healthy, stay yourself. We'll stay alive as long as we can, not for our sake, but to keep sharing the story of the daughter who rose from ashes we created. Every day we'll tell someone about the cost of favoritism, the price of theft, the value of integrity. Thank you for considering it. Thank you more for reconsidering. Thank you most for becoming someone who could choose wisely. With love and respect for your boundaries, Mom and Dad." 2 months later, my father received a kidney from a motorcycle accident victim, a tragedy yielding life the universe's complex mathematics. The transplant succeeded, and he returned to prison to serve his remaining years, teaching writing and corresponding with families on the edge of financial crimes. I returned to building Fair Share, running the foundation and living fully. My surgical risk remained theoretical. My kidneys remained paired. My life remained my own. The decision hadn't been about punishment or forgiveness, but about wisdom, knowing when generosity becomes self-harm, when helping becomes enabling, when love means saying no. Some sacrifices honor the giver, others only perpetuate the cycle of taking. Learning the difference had taken 7 years and $1 billion company, but the lesson was worth more than any valuation. My body remained whole. My boundaries remained firm. My future remained uncompromised by their past. And that more than any kidney was the gift I gave us all. The video call that changed everything came on a Tuesday afternoon in March, 2 months after my father's successful transplant from an anonymous donor. Madison's face filled my laptop screen, but instead of her usual apartment backdrop, she appeared to be in some kind of medical facility. "Joe, I need to tell you something." She began, her voice shaking. Remember how I couldn't be tested as a donor because of my past substance abuse? Of course. I set aside the quarterly reports I'd been reviewing, giving her my full attention. I lied. The words came out in a rush. Not about the substance abuse, that was real, but about the testing. I did get tested. I was a match. A perfect match, actually. Better than you, even. The office around me seemed to tilt. Madison, what are you saying? I was terrified. She continued, tears streaming. I thought if I donated, if I saved him, they'd forgive everything. The lies about Yale, the stolen money, the years of being their perfect failure. I thought one kidney could buy redemption, and I wasn't ready for that, so I lied. But Dad got a kidney. He's okay now. From someone else who died, Madison said flatly. Someone else's tragedy saved him because I was too much of a coward to face my truth. And then I watched you almost risk your life despite everything they did, and I realized I'm still that selfish 16-year-old who laughed when they stole your future. I leaned back, processing this revelation. My sister, the golden child who'd received everything, had withheld the one thing that could have saved our father without risking me. Why are you telling me this now? Because I'm about to do something, and I needed you to know the truth first. She adjusted her camera, revealing more of her surroundings. Definitely a hospital. I'm donating my kidney to someone else, a stranger on the list, someone whose family won't have to watch them die because a coward couldn't face their past. Madison, are you sure? It's the only way I can live with myself, she said firmly. I've been in therapy twice a week since Dad's surgery. Dr. Martinez helped me see that my whole life has been about taking your money, your opportunities, your parents' love. I need to give something real, something that costs me something that can't be taken back. Does anyone else know Mom and Dad? God, no. Can you imagine they'd either try to stop me or worse, turn it into some redemption story about their reformed golden child? This isn't about them. It's about me learning to be human. I watched my sister, really watched her. Gone was the entitled girl who'd spent my college fund on designer clothes. In her place sat a woman struggling with the weight of who she'd been and the possibility of who she could become. The recipient, I asked carefully, do you know anything about them? 22-year-old college student, pre-med, first in their family to attend university. Almost had to drop out when kidney disease hit. Sound familiar? My throat tightened. You picked someone like me. Like who you should have been, Madison corrected. Someone whose dreams shouldn't be derailed by circumstances beyond their control. My therapist says it's not really altruism if I'm trying to rewrite history, but honestly, I'll take whatever gets me to the operating table. When's the surgery? Tomorrow morning. I'm already admitted, already prepped. I wanted to tell you before in case anything goes wrong. You deserve to hear the truth from me. We sat in silence for a moment, two sisters separated by geography and history, but connected by something harder to define. I'm proud of you, I said finally. Not for the donation itself, but for facing the truth. That's harder than any surgery. Madison's composure cracked. How do you not hate me after everything? How do you look at me and see anything worth being proud of? Because hate takes energy I'd rather spend building, I said honestly. And because I've watched you tear yourself down to the foundation and start rebuilding with truth. That's brave, Madison. Braver than I was at your age. You were working 3 jobs and teaching yourself to code at my age, she protested. Out of necessity. You're choosing reconstruction voluntarily. There's a difference. The next morning, I flew to Chicago where Madison was having the surgery. I arrived just as they were wheeling her to the operating room. Our parents didn't know I was there. We'd agreed to keep this between sisters. You came, she whispered, groggy from preoperative medication. Of course I came. Someone has to make sure you don't chicken out. She laughed weakly. Too late for that. They already marked which kidney they're taking. No returns. Hey, Madison. I squeezed her hand. After this, we're even. Clean slate. Whatever happens next, we build as equals. Tears leaked from her eyes. You mean that every word. The surgery went perfectly. Madison woke to find me reading beside her bed, having maintained a vigil through the 6-hour procedure. The recipient, we learned, was already showing improved kidney function. A young woman named Keisha would return to her pre-med studies thanks to my sister's gift. "How does it feel?" I asked when Madison was coherent enough to talk. "Like I finally did something that matters," she said softly. "Like maybe I'm more than just the sum of my mistakes." "You always were. You just needed to see it yourself." The hospital social worker entered with forms and information about recovery. As she explained the process, she mentioned something that stopped us both cold. The recipient's family wanted me to pass along their gratitude. They said to tell the donor that this gift means their daughter can pursue her dream of becoming a doctor, specializing in medical ethics. She wants to ensure equal access to health care, regardless of family financial situations. Your kidney isn't just saving a life, it's potentially saving thousands of future lives. Madison and I exchanged looks. The poetry of it, her kidney enabling someone to fight the kind of medical inequality that had almost killed our father, wasn't lost on either of us. During her recovery, we talked more honestly than we ever had as children, about the roles our parents had forced us into, about the different ways we'd been damaged, about the long roads we'd both traveled to reach this moment. "You know what's funny?" Madison said on day 3, wincing as she adjusted her position. "They spent so much energy making me special that they forgot to make me good. And they were so worried about making you tough that they accidentally made you extraordinary." "We're both just people," I corrected. "Messy, complicated people trying to be better than our worst moments." Speaking of which, Madison pulled out her phone, showing me an email. "Mom and Dad found out. Someone at the prison saw a news story about the donation and recognized my name." The email was classic our parents, drama, emotion, and subtle attempts at control. They were shocked. Madison hadn't told them, proud of her sacrifice, eager to share this redemption story with their prison therapy group. "What are you going to tell them?" I asked. The truth, Madison decided, that this wasn't about them, that not everything in our lives has to be filtered through their narrative, that sometimes a kidney is just a kidney, not a metaphor for family healing. "That's very mature. I learned from watching you. Every choice you've made since 18 has been about your growth, not their reaction. I'm trying to do the same." The unexpected resolution continued to unfold over the following weeks. Madison returned to her accounting studies with renewed purpose, her sacrifice having shifted something fundamental in her self-perception. She started volunteering with the foundation, using her story to help other golden children recognize the poison in pedestals. Our parents forced to confront that both their daughters had been willing to give organs while they'd only been willing to take money went deeper into their therapeutic work. Dr. Sullivan reported they'd had a breakthrough about control and narrative, finally understanding they couldn't script their children's lives or redemptions. But the most unexpected resolution came from Keisha, the recipient of Madison's kidney. She reached out through the transplant program, wanting to meet her donor. The meeting in a quiet cafe near the university was everything Madison needed. "You saved my life," Keisha said simply. "But more than that, you saved my future. I was going to have to drop out, give up on medical school, become another statistic. Now I get to become a doctor who ensures no one else faces that choice." Madison cried through the entire conversation. Later, she told me it was the first time she'd felt her existence had positive meaning, that she'd added something to the world instead of just taking. "I spent years spending your college money on nothing," she reflected. "Now I've given someone else their college years back. It doesn't balance the scales, but maybe it starts tipping them the right direction." The resolution wasn't neat or complete. Our family remained fractured, our parents in prison, our trust rebuilt slowly and carefully. But Madison's gift had shifted the dynamic in ways none of us expected. She'd proven capable of true sacrifice, of giving without expectation of return, of facing hard truths without flinching. "You know what Grandma Rose would say about this?" I asked Madison one evening as she recovered at my apartment, both of us watching the sunset over Manhattan. Tell me. She'd say the best move in chess isn't always the obvious one. Sometimes a pawn becomes a queen not by advancing straight ahead, but by choosing an unexpected path. Madison smiled, one hand unconsciously touching her incision site. From golden child to organ donor, not the transformation anyone expected, but maybe the one you needed. We sat in comfortable silence, two sisters who'd traveled different roads of damage to arrive at the same place, choosing to build rather than blame, to give rather than take, to heal rather than hurt. The unexpected resolution wasn't forgiveness or reconciliation, it was transformation, one kidney at a time. Fair Share had helped millions protect their financial futures from family theft, but Madison had given something more precious, a physical piece of herself to ensure a stranger's dreams survived. Both gifts mattered. Both came from pain, transformed into purpose. The golden child had become gold of a different kind, refined by fire, purified by truth, valuable not for what she'd taken, but for what she'd given. And that resolution, unexpected as it was felt, like the beginning of something real. 5 years had passed since that Christmas Eve when I'd stood in my penthouse listening to my mother's desperate voicemail. Now at 32, I stood in the same space, though it had been transformed into something warmer, more lived in, less like a fortress, and more like a home. The city lights still glittered beyond the windows, but now they felt like possibility rather than isolation. "You ready for this?" Marcus asked, adjusting his tie in my hallway mirror. He'd flown in specifically for today's event, as had so many others who'd been part of this journey. As ready as anyone can be for their sister's wedding, I replied, smoothing down my maid of honor dress, a simple, elegant design Madison had chosen, specifically because it doesn't scream "look at me," which is basically my entire aesthetic now. Madison was marrying David, the transplant coordinator who'd helped facilitate her kidney donation to Keisha. Their romance had begun during her recovery, built on shared values of service and sacrifice. It was quiet, genuine, and completely different from the performative relationships she'd pursued during her Yale years. "The media's going to have a field day," Sharon warned, scrolling through her phone. Former golden child marries transplant coordinator sister who built billion-dollar company from stolen college fund, serves as maid of honor. It writes itself. "Let them write it," I said. "The truth is better than any narrative they could create." The wedding was deliberately small, held at Patricia's house in the garden where Grandma Rose's roses still bloomed. Madison had spent months restoring the garden, learning each plant's needs, understanding that growth required patience and consistent care. "I need to give you something," Madison said when I arrived for pre-ceremony preparations. She handed me an envelope worn at the edges. "I've been carrying this for 2 years, waiting for the right moment." Inside was a check for $85,000. "Madison, what is this?" "Every penny of your college fund that I benefited from," she explained. "I've been saving since I started working, living like a student, putting away everything I could. It's not enough. It can't buy back the years or the opportunities, but it's a start." I stared at the check, this tangible symbol of accountability. "I can't take this. You earned this money honestly working—" "Exactly," Madison interrupted. "I earned it honestly, which means I can choose honestly what to do with it, and I choose to return what was stolen even if I wasn't the one who stole it. Please, Joe, let me do this one thing right." I folded the check carefully. "It's going straight to the foundation. Some kid who's facing what I faced is going to get their chance, because you chose to make this right." "That's perfect," Madison whispered, hugging me. "That's exactly what should happen." The ceremony itself was beautiful in its simplicity. No elaborate displays, no performative excess, just two people promising to build something honest together. David's vows to Madison included a line that made everyone cry. "You gave a piece of yourself to save a stranger. You gave all of yourself to become someone worth saving. I promise to honor both gifts every day." During the reception held under string lights in the garden, I gave my maid of honor speech. Looking out at the gathered faces, our chosen family, a few cousins who'd reconnected after the trial, Keisha sitting with her own family, I spoke from the heart. Madison and I were raised to be competitors, not sisters. I was supposed to be the responsible one, she was supposed to be special. Neither role left room for us to be human. But here's what I've learned: people can change. Not easily, not quickly, but genuinely. My sister went from someone who took my future to someone who gave a stranger theirs. She went from living a lie to telling harder truths than most of us dare speak. And in doing so, she taught me something vital: that holding on to anger is just another kind of theft, stealing your own peace. I raised my glass. To Madison and David, who proved that the best love stories aren't about perfect people, but about imperfect people, perfect for each other's growth. Later, during the father-daughter dance traditionally reserved for the bride, and her father, Madison, danced with David's father instead. Our parents remained in federal prison now in their 7th year of incarceration. They'd sent a letter which Madison had chosen to read privately and not share with the gathering. Their absence was present, acknowledged, but not mourned. "Strange, isn't it?" Patricia said, joining me on the garden bench where Grandma Rose used to sit. "Your parents spent so much energy orchestrating their children's lives, and they missed all the moments that actually mattered." "They're watching the live stream from prison," I revealed. Madison had quietly arranged it not for reconciliation, but for closure. Even incarceration can't stop them from witnessing consequences. As the evening progressed, I found myself in conversation with Keisha, now in her residency at Johns Hopkins. "I'm starting a program," she told me, "matching organ donors with recipients based on more than just medical compatibility, looking at the stories, the needs, the potential impact. What Madison gave me wasn't just a kidney, it was purpose. I want to help create more of those connections. FareShare would love to support that," I offered immediately. "We've got the technology infrastructure to help build the matching platform." And just like that, another branch of healing grew from our tangled family tree. Madison's gift would multiply just as my stolen college fund had multiplied into protection for millions. Pain transformed into purpose, theft into abundance, betrayal into building. The surprise of the evening came when Madison pulled me aside near midnight. "There's something else," she said, practically glowing. "David and I are starting adoption proceedings. We want to give a home to siblings who've been separated by the system. Kids who need to learn that family isn't about blood or money or roles, but about choice and commitment." "Madison, that's beautiful. We're thinking 2, maybe 3 kids. And Joe," she gripped my hands, "we want you to be their godmother, their auntie who teaches them that success isn't about what you're given, but what you build. Will you—" "Of course," I said through tears. "Of course I will." As the reception wound down, I stood in Grandma Rose's garden surrounded by blooms she'd planted and Madison had restored. The symmetry wasn't lost on me. Things could grow back even after being cut down to the roots. My phone buzzed with a message from the prison. Not from my parents, but from Dr. Sullivan. "Your parents wanted me to tell you they watched the whole ceremony. They're grateful Madison found happiness. They understand their absence is its own gift. Your mother said to tell you the roses looked beautiful. She remembered planting them with her mother before she forgot what nurturing meant." I didn't respond, but I picked a single rose from the garden, white with pink edges, Grandma Rose's favorite variety. Tomorrow it would go on her grave with a simple message: "We became the women you knew we could be." The wedding ended with sparklers and Joy Madison and David departing for a honeymoon, modest in cost but rich in meaning. As guests filtered out, my chosen family remained, Marcus discussing new ventures, Sharon planning legal protections for Keisha's program, Patricia organizing foundation scholarships for separated siblings. "You built this," Marcus said, quietly gesturing at the gathering. "From 2 suitcases and a broken heart, you built all of this." "We built this," I corrected. Every person here chose to see potential where others saw worthlessness. That's the real gift. But the true gift was simpler and more complex. In the end, my parents' theft had set in motion a cascade of consequences they never imagined. Their cruelty had created a billion-dollar company protecting millions from family financial abuse, a foundation sending thousands of betrayed students to college, a sister who learned to give instead of take, a network of chosen family proving love is action, not blood. Programs multiply hope from heartbreak. And me, not the sacrificial lamb they'd intended, but someone who learned that the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's living well. It's building bridges from the ashes of burned ones. It's choosing love over bitterness, growth over grudges, future over past. Standing in that garden surrounded by evidence of seeds planted in pain but blooming in purpose, I felt the truth. Grandma Rose had always known. Family isn't what you're born into. It's what you build. And what we'd built from the ruins of what they'd destroyed was more beautiful than anything they'd tried to force. The new beginning wasn't just Madison's marriage or my success or our parents' incarceration. It was the daily choice to transform poison into medicine theft, into gifts, betrayal, into bonds that actually held. 5 years from now, Madison's adopted children would play in this garden. Keisha's program would have saved hundreds of lives. Fair Share would protect millions more. The foundation would educate thousands. And somewhere in a federal prison, 2 people would continue learning that actions have consequences, that favoritism destroys families, that the children you sacrifice might just save themselves and others in the process. But tonight was for celebration, for fairy lights and laughter, for chosen family and chocolate cake, for the knowledge that we'd survived and thrived and found our way to something like happiness. "Hey, everyone," I called out to the remaining guests. "I have an announcement. Fair Share is launching a new initiative, the Rose Williams Memorial Fund. It'll specifically help grandparents protect educational gifts from parental interference. We're starting it with Madison's $85,000 donation plus $1 million match from me." The cheers that erupted felt like validation from the universe itself. In trying to destroy one daughter to elevate another, my parents had created 2 daughters who lifted others. The mathematics of justice aren't always clean, but sometimes they're poetic. As the last guest departed and I helped clean up, I found a note Madison had left on my car. "Joe, thank you for showing me that redemption isn't a destination, but a daily choice. Thank you for proving that success isn't about what you have, but what you help others build. Thank you for being the sister I didn't deserve, but desperately needed. Here's to new beginnings and old roses and the family we choose to become. All my love, Em." I drove home through quiet streets, the city that had once felt like exile now feeling like home. In my apartment, I opened my laptop to find an email from a recent foundation recipient. "Ms. Williams, I started classes at Northwestern today, the same school your parents stole from you. I wanted you to know that I'm majoring in financial ethics with a minor in family law. Your stolen dream is funding mine, and I promise to use it to protect others. Thank you for turning your pain into our possibility." I closed the laptop and poured a glass of wine, toasting the empty room that wasn't empty at all. It was full of purpose, possibility, and the peculiar peace that comes from building beauty from betrayal. The new beginning was now, and it was good. If this story resonated with you, if you've experienced family financial betrayal or know someone who has, I want to hear from you. Share your thoughts in the comments below. How did you overcome? How did you build from the ashes? What would you tell your younger self? If you found value in this journey from theft to triumph, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. We share stories like this every week, real raw narratives about resilience, redemption, and the choice to build rather than break. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Sometimes knowing you're not alone in your struggle is the first step toward healing. Sometimes seeing someone else survive and thrive is the permission we need to believe in our own possibilities. Thank you for taking this journey with me, for witnessing how pain can become purpose, how theft can become gifts, how betrayal can become the beginning of something beautiful. Remember, you are not defined by what was taken from you. You are defined by what you choose to build. Until next time, keep building, keep growing, and keep choosing the family that chooses you back. With love and hope for your own new beginning, Jolpe.